Good morning. Nice of you guys to drop by.
What a piece of junk.
What are you talking about?
Don't be too proud of this technological terror you've constructed.
Look, don't worry. Everything's gonna be fine. Trust me.
I don't know what all this trouble is about, but I'm sure it must be your fault. Don't get technical with me.
This bickering is pointless.
Don't everybody thank me at once.
I don't know where you get your delusions, laser brain.
I'm glad you're here to tell us these things.
How
could you even say that?
I got a bad feeling about this.
Well, come on. Everything's perfectly all right now. We're fine. We're all fine here now. Thank you. How are you?
Would you get going, you pirate?
Get in there, you big furry-o! I don't care what you smell!
I'm getting too old for this sort of thing.
If what you've told me is true, you will have gained my trust.
I like the sound of that.
Get a shuttle ready.
I don't know. Fly casual.
Shuttle Tydirium, what is your cargo and destination?
Transmission commencing.
Hey everybody, thanks again for tuning in to another episode of the Shuttle Tydirium podcast. We are the mothership of Casual X-Wing. Today, it is our 1-year anniversary. So we've actually been doing this podcast for a full year, pretty much every week except 1 week. I think we took a break, and this is our year anniversary. So I've got Phil, my trusty co-pilot here. Phil, how you doing?
I'm doing great. For our anniversary celebration, we actually have an Ewok musical entertainment for the shuttle. We have live music for the shuttle cabin. Very exciting.
Is that what that noise was? I was going to get Biff to take a look at it.
No, it kind of sounds like engine parts rattling around at some times. It's very percussion heavy. They use a lot of special traditional Ewok xylophones and traditional Ewok drums.
At least there's not a Gungan horn, so.
Yeah. I mean, it's not my personal favorite music, but it is very entertaining. It's an important cultural experience.
Yeah, sure. I'll go with that.
Yeah, I was meaning to ask them actually how they make these instruments, because they look a little odd. I don't think the xylophones are made from metal or porcelain the way I think that normal xylophones be made. They're very
maybe it's ivory.
Yeah, that could be it.
Yeah, really.
And I can't recognize where the hide that they used to make the drums came from either. But
yeah, I could have sworn I saw some hair on one, but maybe we should get our chief engineer, Biff. We should get him to take a look at it. Biff, how you doing today?
I am doing great. It's good to be here as always, and I got plenty of work to do. Even if we've got background music, it's always just lovely to set the mood, have a little bit of ambiance in the shuttle. It's awesome. It's good. It's goodness.
All right, and we do have our protocol droid. Maybe we get human resources to ask these Ewoks what's going on. So, J-Bot, how you doing, J-Bot?
I'm doing well. Well, you see, Ewoks are a tribal society, and they're big on reusing every piece of resource that's available to them. That way, it's kind of natural. They use everything. So, what I found out, and I was very proud of them. They're really taking after the culture of the ship. They actually went to the passengers that we unfortunately had to disembark to another ship last flight, and asked them if they could, had anything they wanted to get rid of before they came back.
Yeah, make some special donations.
Yeah, special, that sort of thing. So before they were handed their credit vouchers, they apparently gave up some of their luggage or something. I didn't really ask too many questions, but I'm very proud of them to continue to work in the culture and reuse materials wherever they see fit. So I think they're learning. I really do think they're learning. So I'm glad. I'm happy.
Excellent. I don't think I introduced who I am. I am Jim Chadwick, your pilot. But we've been doing this for a year. So Biff, you're still kind of newish, and you've been listening for a while. When did you actually start listening? What episode?
I think it was around episode 22 when I started listening. It would have been like maybe about October of last year, September or October of last year. I started listening.
Probably, I guess, September within the 20s, but yeah. So how'd you hear about us? I'm just curious.
So I did it was after last year's Gen Con. I was doing some Google searching to see if anybody had posted any comments or pictures from the trench run scenario that I had run. And like number 2 on the Google search was this podcast, the episode, what is it, 4, where you guys discussed the trench run?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah,
and
right.
that's how I stumbled onto it. And I listened to it and then sent you guys the email. And the rest of it is the horrible existence that you guys have had up to this point in time.
You said these guys are idiots. They need some organization.
That's right. These guys are so scatterbrained. They screwed the rules up completely in the entire mission. Like,
Wow.
we got to help them.
Yep.
Excellent. That's pretty cool.
You know, actually, I recently, just for curiosity, and I don't even normally do this, I Googled Shuttle Tydirium. Not Shuttle Tydirium podcast, but just Shuttle Tydirium. And we actually make it on the front page of Google
Really?
search. Yeah.
I remember doing that like early on, just trying to like I think just trying to find the podcast. Like I forgot to add podcast at the end. I typed in Shuttle Tydirium. There's like so many Lego kits and all sorts of things, you know, that is just like okay, podcast. Yeah, there we go. But
yeah,
that's pretty cool. We're on the first page.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I kind of get the feeling you secretly Google yourself all the time, anyways. But
I don't know what you're
Doing all
talking
that
about.
ego surfing.
Guilty.
Is it possible to stalk yourself?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I can't Google my name because if I Google myself, it was actually some Christian singer. And he's got a huge catalog. So the guys at work, somebody was, I forgot, they were on vacation. They went by a pawn shop. One of the guys loves to go by pawn shops and found one of the guy's CDs for $1 and brought it in. And, you know, has my name, you know, glaring over the front of it. And it actually is a redhead. He doesn't bear any resemblance to me, but they're like, Jonathan, what were you doing before you came to work here? And I was like, well, you know, I was working as a kind of a folk singer, nothing big. I'm like, wow, what are you talking about? They'd play that CD every once in a while. So I never find myself on there. I only ever find this random country singer who's worth millions, I'm sure.
Wow. It's great.
All right. So, J-Bot, did you think we'd be doing this a year? Do you think we'd last this long?
Oh, are you crazy? When we first started, and we've probably mentioned this before, like it was more of a let's just try and do something so we'll have some, you know, outlet for our frustration or that sort of thing. And the original goal was we'll just do an episode like every 3 or 4 weeks for like maybe an hour if we can put it together. And of course, me being who I am, like, no, we got to do an hour a week. We have to be consistent. We must have a schedule, et cetera, which is completely unlike me. And and I don't know. I guess I kind of got what I asked for without realizing I didn't really want it. So, it's like I should have just stayed silent, and then I'd actually get some sleep some nights and that sort of thing because. Whew, that first like 6, 8, 9 months of 3 hours of sleep a night after doing one of these is and was still very rough. So, but no, I had no expectation that it would last that long. I mean, who in their right mind would listen to us ramble on, you know, with very little coherency about this game? I mean, heck, I still don't know all the rules and all the cards and stuff, and yet people still listen to this. Like, what's wrong with them?
Excellent. Well, before we trash ourselves too much more, I figured we can go into, I think for our year anniversary, I'm going to have 2 captain's questions. We're going to have a first little small question and then a big question. And I know, J-Bot, you always like to throw in non-Star Wars. So the first one is actually a non-Star Wars captain's question. And it is, what is your favorite TV show of the moment? Not to be like all time, blah, 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 but what TV show are you really grooving on right now? Which is the one you're just kind of like, yeah, I like that show, or it just ended. I really wish it kept going. Or
I got this. I'll go first.
Okay.
I had a friend of mine mention this, and I don't watch a ton of TV. So if there's a ad for something, I obviously won't see it. I'll completely miss it. And he found this show. I guess it's been out for a while, called Forged in Fire, which is it's very kind of reality TV showish, but it's basically got guys and girls. given a blacksmithing challenge or a knife making challenge. And I've watched the first couple, like, oh, this is going to be garbage. And I got sucked into it for some reason. And I think the one thing, I mean, I enjoy it just to see what people come up with and all the crazy kind of how the lengths they go to, but it has that touch of reality shows that for some reason it's like it's been out for 3 seasons, but the people appearing on the 3rd season act as if they've never seen a single episode in their lives. Like they have so they make the same mistakes that everybody does from the first seasons, which seems to be the curse of reality shows. Is like, I really, really want to be on Survivor. And then as soon as you get there, you act like a complete, jerk and you're kicked off. Like, I don't understand why I lost. And it's like, well, did you ever watch any of the previous? Okay. So I enjoy it. But the thing that I found funny about it is it's having the same effect on me that Mythbusters did. And the reason I had to stop watching Mythbusters was it was taking the magic out of life. Right. So you always had this, like, I can watch a movie and, guy gets shot, and he flies backwards. Well, yes, we know that that's really unrealistic, but until you've seen it like shown in a very blatant like experiment, you don't really, it doesn't really sink in. You're like, oh yeah, I know it's not really real, but then you see them kind of just tear apart these kind of movie myths and stuff. Even though we all know in the back of our minds it's all just overdone by Hollywood. Well, what Forged in Fire has done is, for years, and this is probably my fault because I don't do a lot of research on things, shocker, you always had this word Damascus, right? You always, it's Damascus, ooh, and you go to like the Renaissance Fair and you'd see some guy selling Damascus steel. XYZ. Well, then you watch the show and you're like, oh, Damascus, that's garbage. I mean, yeah, it's cool they can do stuff, but you could make it out of anything. It's not some special famous pattern. And you have this vision that like, oh, samurai swords and katanas are made out of this, they're made in such a special, like, nope, sorry. Pew, all the magic like gets ripped out of this kind of, kind of sword making and stuff. All of it gets ripped out of it by this show because it isn't. All this stuff is just things that we've believed in our head because we've never really actually done the research on things. So I enjoy it, but eventually I have a feeling I'm going to have to stop watching it because it's just going to ruin the art and the magic of the world.
I'll go with that. Cool. Good answer. I had never heard of the show. I just Googled it, and yeah, lots of sparks flying, etc. Cool. All right, Biff, I heard you laugh loudest, so you get to go next. Everybody goes silent.
Yeah. So I actually have to think about this quite a bit because we don't have cable here in the household. All of our stuff comes over the air. So if it's kind of not on network broadcast or shows up on like Netflix or something like that, I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, but there's a lot of good stuff on Netflix, and still even a lot of network TV has kind of kicked up its game. So
yeah, there's still a lot of content out there. That's for sure. I'll throw out the honorable mention, but I'm going to run away from it because I think the one that I'm most definitely stuck on is the whole Rebels thing, but we'll get away from that to go on non-Star Wars. So the last show that I think I got really hooked on, and I need to actually go see if there's been updated seasons and so forth, was the I think I've got the title right, Stranger Things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do I have that title correct?
Season 2 is almost out.
Yeah, season 2.
When does it come out?
Soon.
Like next month?
Oh. Cool.
I fear for that. I won't dig into it, but I fear for that second season. It's
It's
got
surely.
so much hype.
I think we all liked that show, but they could easily, screw it up in the second season.
Yeah, I'll just, as a quick mention, like normally when somebody, like friends of mine, fall in love with the TV show, they're like, you've got to watch this. It's so amazing. Rah, rah, rah. I go watch it and they've overhyped it, at least in my imagination. I watched this one and I was like, okay, you guys were right. It was really, really good. So it was, I fear for the second season being able to kind of live up to the hype that the first one built for itself.
I told a lot of people about it, and I'd see them like a week later, like, oh, I watched the entire season. It was great. And because you can do that on Netflix, it being a Netflix show. But I actually didn't watch it all in one go.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I ended up getting my family all watching the thing because my youngest is like 11, And I think some of our neighbors have kids like just a little bit younger. They wouldn't let their kids watch it, but I think he was, right there, right at Spielberg age. And we watched a few episodes, and then he went to summer camp for a week, and we couldn't watch it without him. And, and then we had to get everybody there, and so everybody at one time being able to watch a full episode. So it took us a month to watch the whole thing, and that show really had me, wondering about the next episode. And we'd talk about it, the family would, between episodes. And that was really cool. So my whole family got sucked into that one. But why do you like it? Tell me about your experience.
I got, so it was a little bit of like what J-Bot was just saying, that I was at a pool party and my neighbor said, hey, you got to check this thing out. And I kind of had that normal kind of reserved reaction as in, yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm sure it'll be totally awesome, kind of being skeptical about it. But watched it, and I'm reasonably certain that in that first episode, the boys are down in the basement and they're playing Dungeons and Dragons, which I had never really done. I only had experimented with it a little bit, but I'm like, already I know that there's going to be an aspect of geekiness to this show that will appeal to me, and I just got hooked in with all the little plot developments and everything along the way. And I think the acting was really well done for the most part. So it was kind of a little bit of a complete package, and I'm anxiously awaiting, I suppose, season 2. So this is good news.
When did you watch it?
Probably. I mean, it was a pool party, so probably late summer, early fall when I started watching it, and it wasn't a binge watch. It took about probably 2 months to get through the season.
Yeah,
did you watch it?
I can't binge watch anything
with family, or did you watch it on your own, or what?
I did a little bit with the wife, but I wound up blowing past her, and so for most of it, I did it by myself. Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool.
I don't think my boys would be interested in it. I just don't think that they would latch on to it. So
they don't like. Is it more? They don't like. They're not into the geeky things, or they're what? I'm just curious.
No, they've got a little bit of a geek streak in them, if you will. I mean, they do hang around with me a little bit, so they've got a little bit of a geek streak in them. But I think my oldest would probably actually be afraid of some of the stuff that he would see. He tends to be a little bit on the Tibbin side. And my youngest probably couldn't sit long enough to get kind of.
How old's your oldest?
He's 11. He is 11.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's still some of the episode 3 dark scenes he doesn't like.
Yeah.
He gets uncomfortable with them. So he's kind of at that age where he can have a creative imagination, and then he's got nightmares. So.
Right. Mine's got an older sister, so he's already got nightmares. I think I just went to this Stranger Things wiki, and I don't know when it was last updated, but it says October is when it's going to come out. But I could have sworn it was going to come out sooner than that. But I guess we'll just see, because I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. Cool. All right, cool. Excellent. That's a really good show. I do like that one. So what about you, Phil?
I just finished watching the second season of The Expanse, and I think I actually put this show out as my... I think we had this question before a long time ago. And I think I picked it then, too, from the first season. The Expanse is a sci-fi show on the Sci-Fi Channel, which actually does sci-fi shows now, in case you haven't realized that yet.
Haven't checked them out since they changed their name to Seppi. So
yeah, exactly. There were some real dark days in there where
they ran out of Anaconda movies.
Yeah, I think after Anaconda 5, they started putting on wrestling, and it was,
yep.
They ran out of Anaconda and Leprechaun movies.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, The Expanse is a I don't know if I would exactly call it a hard sci-fi show, but it makes a pretty decent attempt at being one. It's based on a series of books that tries to be, it's it's a near future, about 200 years in the future, setting in the Earth-Mars solar system, where humanity is spread out within the solar system, but Earth is obviously still the most populated. It's overpopulated and suffering, lingering effects of climate change. So
So the
New
big
York.
dynamics, there's Earth, and Earth has its rights, and it's kind of united Earth, and then there's Mars that's been terraformed, and it's the new aggressive young nation separate from Earth.
The terraforming project on Mars isn't complete, but all of Mars is dedicated to completing the terraforming project. So they have it's in a way a very militarized culture. They're all organized around completing the terraforming project, but at the same time they also have a very strong military because they broke away from Earth I think maybe 60, 70 years ago in the show. And ever since then, they've been paranoid about Earth, wanting to come back and take them over. Because in many ways, Mars is more economically powerful than Earth. Their people are more, they're very highly trained, they're very focused, whereas people on Earth, the vast majority of people on Earth are on basic income. They don't have jobs. They just,
young, vibrant economy. Everybody's a mover and a shaker. Young, powerful nation kind of thing. But then there's also the various people who live in colonies.
The belt does. So there's people who are living throughout the solar system on very small stations, space stations, stations built into asteroids and planetoids and moons, and these are the Belter people, and a lot of the resources that are used on Earth and used on Mars actually come from the belt. They mine water, they mine minerals, and they ship those.
Water is used by the Belters.
Yeah, it's very little is actually. They're pretty much just being exploited for resources. So very little of the resources that are collected in the belt stay in the belt, and they live on a razor thin edge of collapse because they don't have very large reserves of water or air. And
we should say that some of the things like water that they mine are used in the belt, but it's the reclamation process, and it's still very razor thin. The resources are basic, like water and air, but they're getting these rare metals that they're giving Mars and Earth for huge. Those guys are getting rich and using things on it, but they're just barely scraping by just for basic necessities.
Right. Yeah. I think there's a line in one of the first few episodes where they say, Ceres, which is you may have heard of this actual planetoid. I think it's a dwarf planet out in the Belt region. It had that bright spot on it a few years back. NASA flew a probe past it in our universe, and there were those bright spots that no one knew what they were. I think did they end up being ice? I don't remember.
I don't remember.
Anyway, people were really interested in it for a month or so. Anyway, Ceres is the main Belter city essentially in the belt, and it has been spun up, which means that the whole planetoid is now spinning fast enough so that when you're on the inside, you actually have a G-force keeping you. That it's sort of a artificial gravity, and that's interesting because when you're on the outside of Ceres, when you're essentially standing on the outside layer, the gravity is higher than when you're in the middle. So the outside of Ceres is actually the nicer place to live because the interior parts have low gravity and it's just not so great. anyway, belters have all sorts of issues. They often don't get the right medical supplements and attention that they need to develop properly in low gravity or zero gravity environments. So a lot of them have like very elongated bone structures, and the show does a pretty decent job of hiring a lot of these very, very skeleton looking actors. I don't know where they find all these guys, but
all these skinny people.
Yeah, I mean,
certainly not America.
Must be a nice casting call. We need you to be lanky and look like a walking skeleton, please.
Yes.
Now I'm curious because I saw this come out. When I had my ankle surgery last summer and was laid up and on pain meds, I saw it, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was neat, but I didn't think it was amazing. I haven't seen season 2, but a lot of people I know really like the show, are really amazed. In fact, I was with a bunch of my friends, old high school, college friends, playing some D&D yesterday. And they were talking about the Expanse, and they're like, "Oh, it's amazing, it's amazing." I'm like, I liked it. It was good, but I wasn't sucked in. I was trying to ask them, and I think what they liked was the realistic physics, the realistic nature of all the science, that it wasn't like Star Wars, etc. And
they
don't
BS you on the science too much. They do a little bit because of the constraints of the show, but only if you're being very picky about it would you actually notice inconsistencies.
But I have to say that I don't care about that. I'm not really an engineer, and I want a good story. As long as the story's good, I just don't care. And I liked The Expanse, and it was enjoyable, but I didn't consider it like a top tier show. It didn't suck me in. It didn't have I don't know. Maybe season 2 is different. Maybe season 2 would really do it.
I really like the socio-political world that they've built. It feels pretty realistic to me. All the different factions, not just between Earth, Mars, and the Belt, but also within each of those places. There's factions vying for power, and that felt real to me.
It's almost like those, Spain, Portugal, and the various colonies in the Americas. You've got Spain,
I don't know.
But
perhaps. I mean, there is a very real colony, mother country and colony dynamic going on, but it's also very different because of the way Earth is, overpopulated and in a very real way unhealthy and struggling on its own to survive. But yeah, there's definitely that mother country colony aspect going on.
I probably just offended some Spanish listeners by suggesting. I'm sorry, Spain, or probably some Portugal. We're nothing like that.
Using the Spanish, actually.
Sorry, Portugal. I didn't mean. Cool. So I actually just recently binge watched a show myself that I tried to watch with the missus. And after 5 minutes, she's like, "No, turn it off. I hate this." And they were gone for a week. And it was Legion. Have any of you guys watched Legion at all?
I know I haven't.
No. I think maybe is that on Netflix?
No, I think it's actually on one of the major networks.
Then I'm getting it mixed up with some movie or something that I saw an advert for. But no, I haven't watched it. No.
So it's it's in the X-Men universe, but it really kind of departs a lot from your standard.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about now.
It's a guy who is diagnosed schizophrenic, but he's really got mutant powers.
Yeah, the most powerful mutant in the universe. Yep.
Well, he's really powerful, but the question is he really schizophrenic, or is it just his powers? And the way they do the show, it's very confusing, and they kind of bounce around a bit, and they play music, and they really kind of make it disjointed a bit, and so you're really kind of confused about what the hell's going on, which is why my wife was like, "I hate this." But to me, I've watched a lot of TV shows in my 46 years, and I hate shows that are so predictable. You're like, yep. First 5 minutes introduce subplot, then after 5 minutes becomes the big problem. And then at the 20-minute mark, you take the thing from the first 5 minutes and tie it in to finish what the big problem was and come out with a funny, solution. 30-minute mark. And this show, it's just even trying to figure out what the hell's going on. Takes a bit of brain power. And the music, the soundtrack is really good. I'm actually very impressed with the soundtrack. I knew music, and I'm Googling it up, trying to figure out what it is and listen to it. But it's funny, it's hysterical, it's X-Men universe that I like. But it's not, it's not all. I don't like the X-Men movies because I thought they were done badly, and it's really interesting and really entertaining. I know it's not going to be for everybody. Like, my wife hates it, and if you don't like a disjointed, have to figure out the plot, like even what is going on, then you won't like it. But it's so damn funny, so funny and scary and very cool. Legion, it really sucked me in. I had to binge watch it because I just was like, what's next? What's next? What's next? It was very good, visually cool, just very well done. I loved it.
So do they do a lot of, I'll call it backstory on some of the characters that they're introducing, like how they kind of came to be or how they develop?
Some, but they really are introducing the major characters. They don't have any main, X-Men people. I think the only one that I could recognize was Avalanche from the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. At least I'm pretty sure that's who it is, because there's a guy who can control Earth.
Okay.
But they don't even really go into him at all in this season. It's 8 episodes, and he's more like a secondary character. And then these people, you don't know who they are. And I don't know who they are. I didn't know who they were from the X-Men universe.
Okay. I've never been much of a comic book type guy or really following the characters and stuff, but when all of the comic book movies and everything started rolling out several years ago, I found that I was very much interested in the character's background. Like, I wouldn't care so much about this person's power and what they can do with it and so forth, but just how did that character kind of come to be? What did they experience? What interactions did they have? Maybe why is he or she trying to go after somebody else? I always found that to be very fascinating and very entertaining, that aspect of it. So some of these movies that they put out, the comic book movies, if I oversimplify them, they'll touch upon that stuff, and those are the ones that I find. The ones that just turn out to be explosions and fighting this, fighting that, I usually don't get too terribly.
Well, I would say the first season is really kind of the backstory of the main character. And apparently there was a comic called Legion that I didn't read that dealt with this character. And it is slightly different from that. But the whole thing is kind of the background character, because you're trying to figure out about this guy and what is his problem, and does he have powers, or is he insane? Or is he insane with powers? And so
sounds neat.
The whole first season is really trying to figure out this one main character's backstory. But even check out a preview, a commercial for it or something. But it's really good. I found it very entertaining.
Yeah.
All right. So that's our first Captain's question. That's for you, J-Bot, because it's a non-Star Wars question.
I guess.
Okay. And so this second one is going to be part of our main topic. 1 year anniversary, 1 year anniversary episode. So with that, the idea is, and I told you guys ahead of time so you could prepare for it. And I think you guys went a lot further than I thought.
Somebody went overboard.
The question is, if you could rewrite the prequels, how would you rewrite them?
Buckle up.
Yeah, so buckle up. This is it.
Get comfortable.
When you get to mine.
Get a glass of water and some popcorn or something.
Pause it now.
Yeah.
Go ahead and take a break now, because I'm pretty sure Biff or Phil, one of the two of them's got storyboards already ready. I've been waiting for this my whole life.
So I know Biff's got a lot, and I don't want to jump straight into his. Maybe J-Bot, should we go into yours as the first lighter, go through one?
Yeah.
Oh, before we start, just do we want to put out a disclaimer that, this is the anniversary episode, so we're taking a bit of a X-Wing break. right? That was our excuse, was it not?
Yeah. So yeah, I think if we have time after all this, we have some B teams to go through. But I'm not sure if we'll get to it.
Yeah.
So
I'll try to warn people on the episode title that they may not find a whole lot of X-Wing miniatures game content.
Yeah. This is not the podcast you're looking for.
If this is your first episode and you haven't made it, and you've made it this far without quitting,
sorry.
Yeah, we do typically talk about X-Wing. Believe it or not, this is just it's an off day. So, do you want to go like through a quick thing? Like, what's the plan here? Because I can give you like just a quick idea, or
take
tell
us
as
what
much
you have.
as you want to, because I think J-Bot, you probably will be shorter than the other.
I have a feeling mine's shorter than the other because I started out going into like crazy detail and I was like, no, these guys will never let me get away with it. So I toned it down. Okay, so I'm not sure what you guys' opinions are, and I'm sure a lot of this stuff is probably going to either make people mad or make people roll their eyes or basically be not in agreement in any way, shape, or form. But I looked at the prequel episodes as like I don't think they're as bad as everybody like claims them to be. I think there's a lot of people who work off of nostalgia and don't remember, quite frankly, all of the plot holes that are in 4, 5, and 6, and all the kind of cliched movie tropes that are in 4, 5, and 6, and because they watched them many, many years ago, and they're their childhood memory. So everything we look back on through that fog of childhood memory tends to get kind of glorified. Instead of you running for 10 yards and a touchdown, it was, I ran at 90 yards for a touchdown, and no one can remember any difference. So you just have this kind of veil you look through the old stuff at. So when episodes 1, 2, and 3 came out, they're like, this is nowhere near as good as the first ones. And it's like, I don't think they're as bad. They're not necessarily as good, but I don't think they were as tragically bad. I think what it was is there were certain parts of it that colored your entire opinion. So everybody looks back at the first episode and like the things they harp on are Jar Jar Binks and the pod race. And they're like, you get rid of the pod race, you get rid of Jar Jar Binks, and suddenly the movie...
And midichlorians.
Yeah, well, yeah, the midichlorians thing.
There's a lot of details.
But some of that stuff, starts to pull back together because the way I look at episodes 1, 2, and 3 are they have to tell something. There has to be a story there that still connects to 4, 5, and 6. So certain characters have to exist. Certain interactions have to exist. You have to start somewhere. And if you don't like the person that's playing the actor, I get it. Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly on some of the acting choices. But it's those little details, I think, that once you start pulling those out of it and you just focus on these characters, these interactions, and these kind of milestones have to be hit, I think in a lot of ways the first episodes start to fall back together as a cohesive story. That being said, I would wholeheartedly change a huge ton of it because there's a couple things that I despise that I don't know if everybody else does. I can't stand the whole like everybody needs to be connected. So like the Palpatine, for example, why does he have to have entry? Why does he have to be connected to Amidala in any way, shape, or form? Why does he when you start to look at the giant plot hole for me is, okay, so let's make the understanding that Palpatine had this grand vision, right? I'm gonna set up this war to eventually work my way into power, right? But somehow he's going to hinge that plan on a character in Anakin Skywalker that, number one, he's never met. Number two, doesn't know exists. Number three, the only reason that they ever come across him is because the people he was planning on having get captured, et cetera, actually escaped. So wait a minute. His whole plan hinges on somebody who, quite frankly, if it had worked, would have never come across.
I don't think his plan did, though.
I think in a lot of ways, that the whole story comes across as that to me, right? So
yeah, I think I agree with Jim. I don't think his plan truly hinges on Anakin. I think that he could have used Darth Maul or.
Well, and that's the thing. How does he use Darth Maul in that instance? Because you see him early in the first episode as being this dark presence already. I'm going to send my my apprentice, my person, and you see him early on. So you already know he's this dark thing. So he can't suddenly become this great, Jedi who helps.
Yeah, but I don't think that
the other.
Anakin being a Jedi was integral to his defeat of the Jedi.
Right, I agree.
But
I don't want to harp on it too much because I don't, but
yeah, but I see it that way because nobody else defeated the Jedi. Like nobody did. Like it was Anakin. So who replaces him?
I thought the clones gunned down a good number of Jedi, more so than
they didn't destroy the clones didn't come in and destroy everything else. They needed somebody to lead them, and I don't think there is a leader that he could have pulled out.
Well, if Count Dooku was still alive, Count Dooku would have been the one to lead him.
I don't know, but either way, nonetheless, it's that's where I get into everybody's going to fight my choice of changing
All right.
this.
We'll let you have your choice. Go for it.
Well, you didn't already, so but we'll see. So I would actually rip out the whole thing with the Senate. I'd rip out all the stuff with the Separatists. I'd rip out basically the entire droid existence, the whole droid army. All that stuff's gone. And to me, the whole overarching story of the universe of Star Wars is not just this small piece of episodes 1 through 7, 8, whatever. What it is, if you ever read through all the history that was officially canon before they got rid of it, I'm not talking about the extended universe. I'm talking about this is the chronology of the universe as given by the Lucasfilms, chronology of the Star Wars universe, which I've got a copy of sitting over here. And yes, I did actually look at it. It's official. And then they ripped it out. That's where I got mad because they said, suddenly this stuff is legends. No, it's an official book. It's got his seal on it. This doesn't go into detail of comic books. This is a timeline from beginning of the quote unquote Star Wars timeline to now. But if you look at that, the whole universe is a cycle. It's just back and forth between dark side, light side, right? Everything's a cycle. And history just continuously repeats itself from way back in the day to now. The characters just change. The names of the entities just change. But in general, it's always there. And so for me, this would be another turn of that cycle. And what I would do is replace all of the Separatist stuff with the Mandalorians. Because then all of this stuff starts to fit back together and it makes sense to me. So I actually made a scroll, and I'll give you the scroll. Because what this does is, what I did is basically said, okay, the general idea of how the movie went is okay. We're just going to change the players. We're just going to change who's involved in this stuff. So I did an opening scroll. These aren't necessarily good because I threw them together when I was working. But episode 1, the great warrior Lord Mandalore has led a seemingly unstoppable army on a decade-long march into Republic space, and the military of the Galactic Republic is on the threshold of collapse. Long reluctant to involve themselves directly in the conflict, the Jedi Order has finally agreed to provide aid following the purposeful destruction of one of its temples by the Mandalorian army. Determined to avoid a prolonged engagement, the Jedi Order has sent a small group of warriors under the guise of a diplomatic mission to assassinate Mandalore. Hey, guess what? Very similar to the beginning of episode 1. We just get rid of this whole crappy trade federation and replace them with the Mandalorian, army and flagship, right? Still have a giant army. We still have characters, Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, etc., sent to a ship on a quote-unquote diplomatic mission that falls apart and they have to escape, right? So they're sent there to assassinate Mandalore. What I actually did
different tenor.
Right, slightly different tenor, but it's still the same thing because Jedi were used as assassins, okay? So, we are I would actually put those two plus a couple more. I'd actually put, the main two we know, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, and then a couple other Jedi there with the sole purpose of setting up Mandalore as a big enemy. He needs to be your Darth Vader of the prequels, right? He needs to be this, holy crap, this dude's unstoppable, because that's what the Mandalorians were, supposed to be. And you got to remember, I'm ripping out all this crap from Rebels, all this crap from the Clone Wars, all this other stuff where they kind of took the teeth out of the Mandalorians. And because all that stuff came after the prequels. None of that stuff was there before the prequels were set up. And for me, they did it because they had to explain why. This is why the Mandalorians aren't a threat anymore. And so, for me, you'd have this whole thing was starting a lot of similar ways, they would escape their little confinement, make their way up to the Mandalorian, equivalent of the throne room or whatever the main thing is, and you'd have a big battle. So the movie would start off with this very nice kind of action, attack into this thing. Mandalore would hold off the group of them, kill at least one or two of the Jedi, like I said, the bit players.
Yep, you have to have that.
Right, yeah, you have to have him to be shown as this strong, kind of threat. Right. And then Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan escape, and this is where I start adjusting things. But I also want it to kind of mirror episodes 4, 5, and 6 in a lot of ways, because even Lucas has said that it's supposed to be that way. It's a bit of a mirror from one to the next.
And it's also Greek tragedy. I mean,
yeah,
it's like a Greek drama. Introduce the situation. Act 2 is introduce the problem, and Act 3 is the resolution. So that's why, like, someone started to throw an FFG about, like, oh, episode 8 is just going to be Empire Strikes Back Part 2, and I'm like, duh.
Yeah. Well, right. Well, see, what I'm actually going for, well, what the general idea for mine is, 1, 2, and 3 need to be the antithesis to 4, 5, and 6. So 2 should be the good side, kind of mostly triumphing instead of the bad side. Does that make sense? Where we always had this joke where all the even numbered movies were the ones where the rebels or the good guys kind of win, and the odd number movies were the other. So that's in a way that's what I'm going for here.
Okay.
So Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan escape, and they land not on a desert freaking planet. I'm tired of all this stuff. Like, it's got to be the same 5 or 6 planets. I would land them on. It doesn't matter. Give it another name, but it's a completely different planet, right? I would actually look at it as it's an agricultural world, right? It doesn't matter. But they crash land. They're obviously being chased. It's very similar in a lot of ways to the beginning of New Hope. They crash land. They are found by Anakin and his father, right? Normal people, absolutely, and other normal people, as far as anybody's concerned. They are found by them, but, they have this kind of introspective, like, away from the parents. Like, Qui-Gon's like, man, he's really, really strong in the Force, and he's of the right age, where we would normally, pick him up as, if we had found him, pick him up and take him off to the Jedi, temple to start training, right? But other than that, it's we did a midichlorian count. He's the chosen one. I think he's bringing balance to the Force. Nope, I'm taking all that out. No balance to the Force, no chosen one. He is a normal person. Like, I think that's where this whole thing went askew, is he's a normal person. So the story this is the rise and fall, in a way, of a normal, like, Jedi who just becomes more powerful. So now we start to mirror things in a lot of ways. They go back to the house. They get caught. Anakin's father and mother get killed as they escape, from the attack from the Mandalorians. We're moving pretty quick. Obviously, I'm glazing over a whole bunch of stuff, but they escape and eventually get captured again by Mandalore. They're captured. They're brought, in front of Mandalore, blah, 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 in chains, whatever. Anakin had somehow escaped magically through technical prowess or whatever, and is able to free them, get them their lightsabers. You have a big battle there at the end. And guess what? Qui-Gon gets killed, just like in the first episode. Like I said, a lot of this stuff is very similar in Mirror. So Mandalore kills Qui-Gon and lets Obi-Wan and Anakin escape, or that gives them the opportunity to escape. They get back to Republic space. And in a lot of ways, we start to see the end the same. We go about in front of the Jedi Council. The Jedi Council is a little bit like, I don't know, he's got a lot of anger, etc. But they're not saying he's the chosen one. It's just, I don't know, he might be a little too old, might be a little too much anger and emotion, whatever. Oh, he'll get over it, and we go our separate ways. But the very end of the first one, let's see if I can dig it out of my notes here. It's very, very much like our role-playing game where I have to dig through my notes to find stuff.
Supporting material.
Right, yeah. So at the very end, we would have like a small, quick scene back on the Mandalorian flagship with Mandalore. Okay, flashback to his ship, and he's adding Qui-Gon's saber to a collection. Right, so he's got almost the Grievous or that character that was in the Clone Wars collection of lightsabers. Right.
Yeah.
The idea is to constantly show that this guy can handle himself against Jedi. Right. He's adding it to a collection, and off screen we hear a voice. Why did you let him or why did you let them escape? It's unlike you to show mercy. And Mandalore just turns to him and said, you have what you came for. Now leave me to my war before I stop entertaining your lies. We pan out as he's looking at a big map of the galaxy with, little arrows and whatever. And just off in the corner, we see a nice dark cloaked figure, walk out of the room, right? So you're like, what was that? That's weird. Huh. Is he working for somebody? What's going on? Episode 2, I get rid of that bullcrap Attack of the Clones, and we call it what it should have been called. Clone War. Just get rid. I remember when that first came out, I'm like, send in the clowns. Attack the Clowns. Like, this is about the stupidest thing you could have come up with when you had the name there. And that felt very much like Lucas saying, I know you want to call it the Clone Wars. Everybody's expecting to call it the Clone Wars. Screw you. I'm calling it something completely different. That's what that always felt like to me. So episode 2. Actually, I missed part of this in here, but off to the side, at some point, you get one of those flash scene wipe things. We see Chancellor Palpatine, utterly unconnected to everything, going before the Senate saying, we're losing the war. We got to have something, kind of a Hail Mary last-ditch effort. And he mentions in the first one, I want to start, we need to build this grand army of the Republic. And it obviously gets voted in. And that's to lead into this whole setting up of the clones. It's not hidden. It's not some secret thing that suddenly gets discovered.
I like that.
It's right. It's there. And like I said, Palpatine's not connected to any of this. He's just a senator as far as anybody's concerned.
Okay. I was going to ask, is he chancellor or senator at this point?
Well, no, he's a chancellor at this point because it doesn't matter. We don't need, 20 minutes of politics thrown into the middle of our movie. We just set him up as chancellor. Sorry, we don't need somebody. I want to, move that we make so and so. No, just he's a chancellor. Who cares? If you look back at it, the chancellor that's in episode 1, what did he do other than sit down after being, dethroned? Right? Did he do anything else?
Just look disgruntled.
Right. Yeah. So
I think he purposely did nothing to show the dysfunction of the Senate. But yeah, I get your point.
Right. So for me, that was part of it. Get rid of all this crappy politics. Just glaze over it. All right. So episode 2, Clone War, bolstered by the infusion of a seemingly endless army of accelerated growth clones, and you have to include that accelerated to get some of these people happy. The Grand Army of the Republic has forced the Mandalorian army into a stalemate. All right, because it never really made sense because they didn't really super explain it. I know they did, but kind of glazed over it. Obi-Wan Kenobi and his young apprentice Anakin Skywalker have been sent to escort Senator Amidala on her inspection of the Republic training facilities on Kamino, because you have to get those two connected at some point, right? And it doesn't need to be that they were childhood, blah, 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 because that always felt a little wonky to me. Unbeknownst to the two Jedi, an elite Mandalorian strike force has landed on the planet intent on destroying the Republic's primary cloning facility. Okay, so we've set up the kind of interaction that's going to happen here. So they go, blah, blah, blah. You have the whole thing there where they discover Jango Fett as, the kind of genetic piece of this thing. And we have, in a lot of ways, similar things. Strike Force hits, and they're destroying the clone, facility. It's what you would do if you're in a war, right? Let's take out their means of producing more soldiers, right? Especially if you look at it in the Star Wars universe, where there's really very little way of stopping a giant ship from warping into, into your space and bombarding your planet. And if you know that, hey, this is where they make all of their military assets are on one freaking planet. Why don't we just zip in, even if it takes half our fleet, nuke this planet and then zip back out. So in a way, that's what they're doing. They're sending a strike force in to do this. They just happen to catch Obi-Wan and Anakin there. And of course, this is 10, 15 years in the future from the first one. During this big fight, you have Anakin protecting Amidala, but you still get to see her being kind of a bit of a badass, in her own right. And Obi-Wan faces off with Jango Fett a lot like we saw already. The difference here is Jango Fett handily handles Obi-Wan, as in it is not this kind of back and forth. It is a very straightforward, like, he knows what he's doing. He's trained. They've been in a war. They're warriors. They're used to fighting these people. And if people realize that, hey, wait a minute, Mandalorian armor is built out of a material that is resistant to lightsabers. He would know this and fight a little bit differently knowing that sort of thing. Okay, so he's about to kill Obi-Wan. That's when Anakin jumps in. He's able to fight both of them off, gets onto his ship, maybe leaves some snide remark like, like, wow, you're pretty strong. I can't wait to fight you again, sort of thing, whatever. Disappears. Okay, so we now fast forward. A lot of this stuff is going to be very similar to what happens in 2, where Obi-Wan is doing this kind of background research, trying to figure out who this guy was. Meanwhile, there's an assassin being sent after Amidala and Anakin because maybe they know too much or something, whatever. But this gives you your opportunity to build that kind of romantic relationship, which I think was very heavy-handed in the movies, and it doesn't need to be heavy-handed. I think we all get the point. At least most adults kind of get what's going on here. The two of them are set up as guard or as a person being protected and protector, and they just start to slowly form this relationship and fall in love, right? We get that. We don't need a heavy-handed version of it, which is what it felt like in the movie. And
I thought it was pretty subtle.
Are you an angel?
Yeah, you look like an angel. Yeah, and of course, the biggest thing I would change, and this is something that I hate, is obviously the acting. Because there's only so much you can do with somebody. Even if the line is great, like if the person's butchering it, then you're like, well, okay, this is horrible. And for me, by getting rid of the whole desert planet, you can get rid of like one of the worst lines in the whole series of "I hate sand, it gets everywhere. It's a roar for cuz." Blah blah blah. Like, yeah, okay. Can we get rid of that?
Worst line or best line? Most memorable line from the prequels.
I wish I could wish my feelings away.
Right. Right. So, like I said, I would get rid of that whole heavy-handed version of it, and you just do this kind of intercut of Obi-Wan doing his research and digging in through all this stuff, and Anakin and Amidala, falling in love, right? So we don't need this heavy-handed thing. Eventually, the assassin that's been stalking them shows up, and we get rid of the one that was in the movie whose name I cannot recall now, the shapeshifter, and replace it with Maul, right? So we replace the assassin with Darth Maul. Darth Maul attacks, and all this is because of Hollywood. Happens about the same time, right? It coalesces about the same time. Obi-Wan figures out what's going on right about the time that Darth Maul attacks, right? It's just the way Hollywood works. So he attacks and immediately puts Anakin on the back foot. So Anakin is trying to play defense because he's going after Amidala. Maul is. So anytime he starts getting real, I'm starting to get the upper hand back, Maul will go after Amidala and suddenly put him on the back foot, right? So this gets him more and more frustrated, more and more angry, more and more reckless. You start to see that kind of growing desperation because he's fallen in love with her and he's trying to protect her. At some point during this fight, you have the classic hand getting lopped off because it's Star Wars and somebody has to lose a hand eventually, right? So he gets a hand lopped off and kind of is out of the fight, right? And so Maul kind of, does the glare, I'm more powerful than you, and goes over to kill Amidala, and that's when you get the no, that sort of has to be very emotional. But this is where he touches the dark side, where Anakin, and I put in here because I don't know enough about all these crazy flashlight wielding powers, manifests the Force lightning thing just out of pure rage and pure frustration and pure desperation, manifests, because he doesn't have his lightsaber anymore because it got cut off and whatever, manifests pure rage and actually uses Force lightning and stuns Maul, and that's when Obi-Wan crashes into the room and finishes off Maul. And you have this moment of if you remember, these people didn't really know the Sith. They've never really fought the Sith. They've been around for ages and never really had to deal with it. So Obi-Wan would have this moment of what was that you were just doing, that whole Force lightning thing? What was that? I've never seen anybody actually do that in practice. No one's ever actually done that. And he's like, I don't know. I don't know what it was. Right. So that gives you that touch of the dark side. And we fast forward. Eventually, we fast forward. Like I said, I glazed over a whole bunch of this stuff. We fast forward to where the end of this thing is similar to the beginning of Episode 3, where Mandalore has kidnapped Palpatine. And in the case of Episode 3, it was, I think, Grievous had done it. Although Dooku was on the ship too, so it was a little weird to me. But so Mandalore has kidnapped Palpatine. We fast forward to an eventual confrontation between Mandalore, Obi-Wan, Anakin, etc., in front of Palpatine. Very similar to how Dooku and them fought. So Obi-Wan gets taken out. You have the big fight between Anakin and Mandalore. Anakin, of course, defeats Mandalore, but the same way, just keeps getting madder and madder. And what you don't know, but behind the scenes, is Palpatine, the Emperor, is affecting the fight. Like, it's the whole, he's using his powers to change Anakin's dice, right? To make him hit better or dodge the attacks, right? You don't realize this, but that's what's going on. Maybe they show the occasional, him kind of grimacing or him, pointing stuff,
like,
right?
You could get that point across by like camera work and little like gestures from Palpatine that Anakin mirrors. Yeah, you can do that.
Just little subtle stuff. Don't be heavy-handed with it. Because remember, if you were to watch this 1 through 6 instead of 4, 5, and 6, you have no idea who this guy is. You don't know that he's some dark, imposing emperor, right? He just feels like because we haven't done anything with him. He just feels like, he's just a random, senator, politician. We don't really know anything about him.
I have to ask, is he going to go, do it?
No,
No, I want him to.
No,
do it.
No, but I think you would have that, like they did it a little bit okay in the movie where he's kind of like cheering, like kind of like I think he could get a bit of that across. But at the end of the fight, obviously he kills him, and he'll say something along the lines of, and I squiggle this down very quickly. At the end of it, he'll talk to Anakin while Obi-Wan's still unconscious. He says, "Your passion to protect your loved ones seems to make you stronger." Anakin will answer with, what's the Jedi code for that? There is no passion, only serenity. But you can see he's kind of struggling with it. There is no passion, only serenity. And Palp will answer with the Sith code, which is, through passion, you gain strength. And you kind of end the whole thing with this kind of confused, like, look on Anakin's face. Like, have I heard that right before? You see what I'm saying? Where you're starting to get that turn of like that taste of the dark side that's making him powerful. And obviously the whole thing ends, but it's on a triumphant note because they've killed Mandalore, et cetera, and it will end with like that kind of showing the swing of the battle changing with the head of the Mandalorian army being taken out. So, and then the third one, I would actually keep relatively close to the one that happened, because a lot of this stuff needs to be, you have to catch yourself back up to episode 4. So I actually don't mind episode 3 as much as some people do. I think a lot of it is workable and can be adjusted to fit kind of the story that I've already laid out, where you just replace the Separatist army with the Mandalorian army. You replace, obviously Maul's already dead, which he should have really been officially dead in the movies, and that sort of thing. But you end with because you have to have the kids, you have to have the fall of Anakin. It can all revolve around the exact same things, where he's afraid for the life of his wife and children, and he's, angry at having been kind of pushed aside by the Jedi Council. All of that stuff to me is fine. I was perfectly fine with it watching the movies. I just didn't like the actor that was playing the role and the way he kind of butchered so much of it. But I think in general, in the lines, yeah, and
you can't.
A lot of that stuff. But you see what I'm saying? A lot of it can be rewritten, but it needs to be there. Like, there's almost no way to revolve. And maybe you guys figured it out, but there's almost no way to kind of get rid of the fact that he has to have kids at some point, right? Which means he has to have some kind of romantic relationship.
Yeah,
with
Luke
somebody.
and Leia have to be conceived.
Right. So
minimum.
To me, those parts can't be ripped out of the story.
Not by the Force.
Right. And
no
that's
one
what
has
I was
to be
getting.
conceived by the Force.
Right, and that's what I was trying to get rid of. Is it's like Anakin isn't special in any way. Like he's not. He might be really powerful with the Force, but he is not a chosen one. He's not there to bring about balance.
Yeah, you don't need the Immaculate Conception.
Right. He can just be a normal Jedi who fell to the dark side, and that's what this story is a story of how somebody can fall and how easily in a lot of ways they can fall. And
I think that's more compelling than Immaculate Conception.
And then
you can sort of relate to him.
Yeah, and it makes a little bit more sense for how, in a way, easily he can be redeemed. Because, I mean, he was redeemed really quickly in the other ones, but it can explain how, to me, it explains, wait a minute, if the whole reason his character fell from grace was because of his passion and his love for his family, it makes sense that his passion and his love for his family would pull him back away from the dark side. And I think that kind of arc would tell a little bit better story than what they did. And you can still shoehorn in all the other connecting points. He can be dumped off on Tatooine, where it is relatives of Anakin's that lived, but it's a completely different planet from where he grew up, which would make it a little bit more sense for why Darth Vader didn't really recognize the planet in any way.
Right.
I would not have R2 and C-3PO at all in the first 3 movies. They're not needed. They're unnecessary.
My favorite part from the old Episode 3 is R2-D2 and the Emperor on the ship, like hanging out as they crash land. It's like, oh, we're together. This is fun.
And that's the thing. Like, he shoehorns so much stuff into those first 3.
There's too much cuteness.
Right. That's like, we don't need that. It's not necessary. If you're telling the story like as a complete, like 1 through 6, I think that can be done. And what this would what this does, obviously as a fan, is it shows off the kind of prowess of the Mandalorians. It gives Jango Fett a bigger character, because I feel like the character kind of deserved it a little bit better. And it still sets up the whole Boba Fett can still be there as his son, as a pure clone of Jango, which suddenly explains why he's so good, because he's a pure clone of somebody who was the leader of a Mandalorian army. And you can still have it, because of this big war, the Mandalorian kind of society has to rethink the way it did stuff, and it still suddenly fits into the Rebels timeline with how they're treated there. I felt like what they did with the first one with the droid army is they needed an excuse to put things in there that were non-human that they could destroy, willy-nilly with lightsabers and blasters and stuff. Whereas in Episode 4, they didn't seem to mind that much blowing up stormtroopers and
cutting
things.
Off people's arms graphically on showing it.
Right. Yeah. So I think that's what they did is he kind of dumbed it down a little bit with Episode 1. Let's put droids in there so that people, Disney, or not Disney, but whoever doesn't kill me for, hacking apart thousands of these things.
Yeah, I think that...
Then they're okay by Episode 2 and 3 with the clones getting killed by, faceless clones being killed by the thousands. Right. So just get rid of that and make it the same way from the beginning.
I think the droids could have worked if they had not made them goofy.
Yes, I agree. I do agree with that.
But go on.
If they had made the droids more serious, these are just straight warriors. They don't have individual identities. They're not like, afraid to go in and shoot at the Jedi there at the very beginning of Episode 1. It's like, no, you go in. No, you go in. The droids. They would just, if they're battle droids, they don't have that programming.
Right.
They just have them march forward and shoot.
Kill everything.
Right. Yeah. They would act more like the destroyer droids, I guess, if that makes sense.
Destroyer droids
point a gun
are fine.
and shoot. Yeah. Point a gun and shoot. And I would have been a little bit more okay with it. And don't get me wrong, I like the droids. I actually like all the little battle droids. I think they're cool. But yeah, I don't have as wholesale of a detail as I'm sure you guys do. But I had in a way a major change, a major rewrite of that first episode. And I think from that point forward, it kind of writes itself. If you set up a different antagonist at the beginning, it starts to rewrite itself going forward.
I will say that I think all of us could probably agree that if you just hire different actors and better writers,
right,
you could make a big improvement. It's true.
Yeah. Just you could take the exact material, the exact storyline and arc and stuff, and do a ton with it. Just rewriting it and recasting some of the roles, not even all of them, some of them.
Yeah,
I think. What's his name that played Obi-Wan was fine. I think obviously Amidala was fine.
He can act, yeah.
Even Palpatine was fine. Like I was perfectly okay with those. To me, it was just like Anakin. How could you screw up Anakin? He's the most important character in your prequels.
And the both actors, the kid actor and the adult actor, were both just bad.
Right.
I don't.
Actor,
I'm not. I tend not to be too harsh on kid actors, but
Well, particularly after just seeing Sixth Sense, why didn't they get that kid?
Oh, Sixth Sense, yeah.
Why didn't they get that kid? That kid would have been so much better.
Did they, when they cast him, did they pull him from obscurity too? Like, did they just grab him like in some big casting call? He wasn't like the son of somebody, or
I don't know.
Not that I'm aware of.
That's also a tradition for Star Wars, is to pull actors out of obscurity.
Right, and that's what I was thinking, is that it was just like a general casting call. Hey, let's pull this guy doesn't have a giant portfolio of work, and that's tough. That is really difficult. I mean, in light of the discussion earlier with Stranger Things, which is what they basically did with some of those kids, and they hit the jackpot with some of those kids. But I think part of that was probably directing too, with the people who do Stranger Things, and writing and directing helped like kind of mask or bring out the kids, make them better, which wasn't done so well with Star Wars. But it was also a product in the 90s. Let's not forget it was almost 20 years ago.
That is true.
Different world.
Yeah.
Different world. So, okay, so that was me rambling. Next.
I can tell you obviously like the Mandalorians.
Well, that's what they were, though. They've only had like 3 or 4 attempts on taking over the galaxy in their time. And guess what? They worked hand in hand with the Sith. And it kind of makes sense that you find out later on that, actually, I might not have mentioned that Jango Fett is the Mandalore. So he's providing the genetic pattern for the clone army at the same time he's leading the Mandalorian army. Like, so what the hell's going on? You know, and they always worked with the Sith, or not always, but a lot of times worked with the Sith. So it kind of makes sense in a way that it would happen again, that he would be, or the Mandalorians would be set up as this kind of antagonist to bring about the Empire, to destroy the old Republic, or the Republic as it exists, and make it the
Empire.
Make it into an empire. You know, one way or another. If you think about it, the Emperor is working from both sides. Either I can control the Mandalorians, they can win, and I can set myself up as Emperor at the head of their army, or I can set up this one through the Republic and have the same thing happen. You know, and so it's happened before. It's been attempted before, and it makes sense that it would be attempted again. They're a militaristic society. It's kind of what they do. So it would makes more sense than just a random group of trade companies suddenly, you know, trying to take over the galaxy with droids.
Well, they're not trying to take over. They were doing a blockade
of one planet that turned into the galaxy. You know, it was a little strange for me, but I would, like I said, I'd get rid of all of them completely. They would just save a lot.
So
of
it says it like as a little aside that whole bit about, you know, blockading Naboo. And, you know, why did they even wind up doing that? That one of my boys was watching some Lego Star Wars.
Right. Yeah.
You know, a little cartoon or something. And it was the absolute best parody, because for like 5 minutes straight, every time the whole blockade of Naboo came up as subject matter within this, there was always some aside as in, and we're not going to explain why that's needed or why that exists at all. So they're totally making fun of the fact that they never explained why they were
those Lego games, like the Lego games. Yeah. I'm not sure if it's one of those TV shows. They take the Mickey out of like so many of those movies, from Lord of the Rings to Star Wars to Indiana Jones. I mean, they really hammer in like there's one from the Lord of the Rings where, you know, where Boromir's getting shot by the arrows by that Uruk-hai leader.
Yeah.
Where like in the Lego game he's shooting him with like banana, and then like he draws back and shoots him with like a chicken. It's like the most random crap, because if you remember from the movie, it was like he's just sitting there and getting shot over and over again with arrows. So they just played. So it was like the same thing for like 5 minutes. You just see him changing into different stuff that he's firing at him. They don't have any qualms about calling out plot holes and stupid stuff in those Lego games. Wow, they're so
it's good stuff. That Lego, the Lego videos and stuff, they're hilarious.
Yeah.
Okay, who's next?
All right, which you guys want to go?
I could go.
Yeah, Phil, I'm kind of afraid to go.
After they tear apart all my ideas, it's like, oh god, this is not good.
All right. So my approach to this was starting from a blank slate as opposed to looking at the original prequels and trying to work from there. And I think I when I approached this, I had a list of must-haves. This includes Anakin turns to the dark side. Anakin and Obi-Wan have a relationship. Anakin is a talented student. Obi-Wan is a teacher. Anakin is a good pilot. And maybe Obi-Wan is a good general. Because that's why, that's the whole connection between him and Leia and Bail Organa. I also have Luke and Leia are conceived. So love story has to be in this. We have to go from the Republic to the Empire, or at least start that transition. I have Clone Wars ? Because they're referenced, and that's when Obi-Wan, rose. That's when he proved himself as a general. So I think Clone Wars is a kind of a no-brainer to portray.
Yeah, they mention it in 4 of having fought together in the Clone Wars.
Exactly. And I also have Uncle Owen here ? Some connection to Uncle Owen. I don't think I actually came through on that though. So for the first, you can hear me flipping pages here. For the first episode, I have it. I call it the End of Peace. And again, this is sort of starting from scratch here, and in this one, I think the opening scroll would be something like, the Republic has enjoyed hundreds of years of peace. The Jedi, or the principle of peacekeeping force, supplemented by a small Republic military. Prosperity reigns throughout the galaxy. But there is a threat emerging from outside the known, outside of known space. 2 Jedi Knights, Anakin and Obi-Wan, have been dispatched to investigate rumors of military buildup on a planet in the Outer Rim. And they're approaching the planet at the start of the episode. And basically what happens is we start with Obi-Wan and Anakin in a ship, and Anakin is piloting, Obi-Wan is sort of sitting in the back, hanging out, and Anakin is complaining that he has been made to fly this transport ship, because he really wants to be piloting something small. He wants to be piloting his starfighter. This is a big clunker, and Obi-Wan says, relax. Our contact said that Jedi won't be necessarily safe in this system, and we had to, we have to be discreet. And you get the impression that they've essentially taken a Jedi transport craft that they use and just taken all the marking, all the Jedi and Republic markings off the ship in an attempt to be discreet. And what happens is they jump into the system, and when they approach the planet, they actually get attacked anyway. And you see Anakin, throwing this old clunker of a ship, which maybe doesn't even have any weapons, through like an asteroid belt, and he's able to outpilot to an extent the ships that are pursuing him. But because he doesn't have any weapons, and because he's flying this, clunker of a ship, in the end, it looks like they're going to get them. Like the bad guys are closing in, they're going to blow them up. And then Padme shows up. Now, I'm just going with the Padme Amidala name, just to make things easy for everyone. And she comes in and blows up the pursuit craft. And in my version, she's actually kind of like a Han Solo type character. and it turns out that she's their contact who told them to be discreet in the first place. And she's flying, some sort of, light freighter-esque ship, and she's got a
Falcon ship.
Yeah, I don't know if it's exact. It's not like the Millennium Falcon, but it's comparable in some ways.
It's the precursor. It looks similar.
Yeah,
to it. Like the shuttle without the.
Maybe it's
maybe
it's a YT-1300 that actually looks better than the.
No,
Millennium
it's a
Falcon.
YT-900.
It has to be a lower number. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm saying because the YT-13, because the Millennium Falcon is such a piece of junk. This one actually looks better.
Yeah, fresh off the assembly line.
Yeah,
it's got a triangular dish instead of a circular rectangular.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, and she's got like a the mirroring is supposed to be medium-handed her to Han Solo, so she gives him a lot of sass. She says, "You guys are idiots. Obviously, this is a Jedi transport with the markings removed. You obviously didn't take me seriously." She has the comic relief in this is going to be, I think, a Trandoshan. She has a Trandoshan co-pilot and crew member, and he pretty much just says nothing the entire time and just gives everybody, people try to be nice to him or banter with him, and he just flicks out a tongue or something. Ignores them.
It's the equivalent of the Chewbacca.
He's like the anti-Chewbacca. He's not lovable. He's just standoffish to everyone except Padme.
That's funny.
Comically so.
Comic relief. Who needs that?
Yeah. So anyway, she rescues them and brings them down to the planet to continue their investigation, because obviously something is up. And then so the first thing they do is report back to their superiors, and so they get on the hologram, and lo and behold, actually their boss turns out to be Palpatine, because in this universe, Palpatine is the military liaison from the Senate to the Jedi. And I think I actually stole this from someone else's reimagining, so I don't think I can take credit for that. But I think it is a good idea. Anyway, Palpatine is their boss, and they're kind of, they're friendly with him. He seems like a, understanding and straightforward guy. And he says that this is outrageous, and he'll send more help. And they say, no, maybe not. Because they want to be a little discreet still, and they want to figure out what's going on. And Palpatine seems concerned for them, and almost insists on sending forces, but relents and sort of says, "Okay, but we'll be ready when you need us." And Anakin is in this sort of he's the hard charger. He really wants to go he wants to take the direct route and find out who is responsible for attacking them and get to the bottom of things. Obi-Wan is more wants to be more discreet, and so does Padme. But essentially, a lot of this episode is going to be an investigation of what's going on, and I figure, fill in the blanks, some swashbuckling, some, little action sequences. But pretty much they find out that what is happening is this planet has recently constructed arms factories. So they're making starfighters, they're making blasters, they're making war equipment. And they're shipping it out, but they're not shipping it out in the known galaxy. They're shipping it out into what's called wild space, which is sort of an uncharted region of space. And they're getting money back.
That's wild.
Yeah.
It's far out, too.
That was a good one. Go on.
Okay, so what happens is the Anakin, Obi-Wan, Padme track these shipments, and they track them out and find this massive fleet that's sitting in wild space. And they find out that, in fact, there's out in wild space in the past decade or so, a powerful military force has been sweeping across wild space, sweeping up everything in its wake, and it's sort of like the Mongolian horde. And at the core of this horde, this armada, is one leader, and this sort of mirrors what J-Bot had. He's not a Mandalorian per se, but he is Mandalorian-esque in that he's a very powerful military leader. He's I call him the Khan, because it's sort of like a Mongolian thing, but name him whatever.
You're not crossing the streams, are
That's
you?
right.
Yeah.
You're trying to cross the streams. Go!
Yeah. No. Yeah, I think in the end we would want to call him something that isn't the Khan, but
Right. Yeah. Gotta be careful here.
yeah.
We're flirting with it.
Very much like that character.
Might end up as a space war between the two franchises.
Yeah. And anyway, the
ship shaped like the Enterprise or Warbirds or something?
Hadn't planned on that. Anyway, the Khan is essentially he's built a military by cloning himself. And these are the clones that, the Clone Wars are named for. And the clones are actually the bad guys in the war.
I like that.
Yeah, I considered doing that too, but I couldn't get past the whole, wanting them to be on the same side as the Emperor, I guess, and the Jedi for that Order 66 part.
Yeah.
So when I was trying to wedge the two together, I'm like, we still have to have the Order 66. That's why I said Episode 3 was very similar. And that's why I had to keep the two on the same side. But I did like the idea of making them the bad guys.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, they see this fleet, and it's obvious that it's an invasion fleet. And they find out that very soon it's actually going to launch an attack on the Republic. It's going to strike at the Senate. It's going to attack Coruscant. And the Republic is just completely unprepared for this. And Obi-Wan says they have enough ships and troops to take Coruscant within a week. We can't, we have to do something. So after, briefly reporting to Palpatine to, tell him what's going on, tell him that he has to start evacuating the Senate, etc., etc., they hatch a sort of a harebrained scheme, and they smuggle themselves onto the mothership of the Armada. It's sort of like a Imperial Super Star Destroyer, I would say, sized ship. That's at the heart of the Armada.
It's crazy enough, it just might work.
Yeah. And their plan is to sabotage the hyperdrive on this ship and then hold up the invasion long enough for the Republic to react a little bit, to buy them a little bit of time. And, they get on board. They get a small detachment of reinforcements to help them carry out this plan from Palpatine. And one of the guys at the head of these reinforcements is a old general. I call him Captain Rex in this because he's kind of a Captain Rex type character. He's an old friend of Obi-Wan's. They have, they have this little interaction. They're like, "Oh, good to see you. This is going to be one hell of a fight." And you get the, it's obvious that they're really good old friends. And they've been working together for a long time. And what happens is they sneak onto the mothership, and most of the strike force goes down to the engines to sabotage it. But Obi-Wan decides to try to talk to the Khan, because he realizes that even if they manage to sabotage a hyperdrive, there's still going to be a war, and it's still going to be, enormously destructive to the entire galaxy. And he says that he's obligated to try to negotiate with the Khan before they start the war, essentially by sabotaging this hyperdrive. So he goes up to talk to the Khan, and they have that's when you actually meet the Khan for the first time and find out what he's all about. And he's a typical military genius, badass type character. But Obi-Wan obviously fails to convert him. It fails to convince him not to attack. and the Khan ends up taking him prisoner. Obi-Wan tries to escape, but he pretty much only gets halfway. He only makes half his escape. He is trapped somewhere, but they're gonna get him eventually. And what happens is the mothership, in the meantime, makes a jump to the system where all this had started, where they had met Padme. And this turns out to be Padme's home system. And what happens is, after the mothership makes that jump, they sabotage the hyperdrive. That planet is like on the route to Coruscant, right? So this is the first step in making the attack on the Republic. Is they're pretty much getting in position to make the hyperspace jump to Coruscant eventually. So once they're in that system, the strike force sabotages the hyperdrive, so the mothership is stuck there for, for probably months, they say, and the strike team starts to evacuate, but Captain Rex says, I can't leave Obi-Wan. He tells Anakin to get everyone off, but Rex is going to go and save Obi-Wan, and he goes off, and essentially what happens is Rex gets himself killed saving Obi-Wan. And maybe to add some more on top of this, maybe the Khan kills him personally. Yeah, and Obi-Wan is very upset. And Rex probably disobeys orders directly from Obi-Wan in doing this. So then we have the extraction, and the episode ends with Padme's homeworld essentially being bombarded into almost nothingness as the Khan vents his frustration at being thwarted even momentarily, and everybody escapes. But it's very clear that everyone's very upset, and they know that this is just the first step in the war. So that's where we end episode 1, the end of peace. So we move on to episode 2, and it's going to be a bit of a time jump, but episode 2 is called the Lost Night. And the opening crawl here is something like, the war is going badly, system after system is falling to the Khan's armada. Those that surrender are enslaved, the rest are slaughtered. The Republic is barely able to slow the onslaught. Much of its fledgling fleet is only protecting the core worlds of the Republic. Factionalism reigns in the Senate, because everyone is upset that their planet is being protected. They're fighting over resources as the military buildup continues. There's a very draconian draft and everything. It's a total war situation within the Republic, because they're scrambling to react all of a sudden and raise an army out of nothing. So there's political upheaval, also social upheaval, as pretty much every able-bodied citizen is working in a factory to support the war effort, or being drafted into the Republic military, or into local system militaries.
That's just like the American Civil War, that after a while, the Union started invading the coastlines of all these different states. So a lot of the states kept holding back their equipment and resources to try to defend their coastline, when the Army of Northern Virginia was lacking all sorts of basic equipment, and it was sitting at home in warehouses for the Home Guard.
Yeah, there's a lot of infighting and Home Guard type situations, and local forces versus Republic forces. Not fighting each other, but fighting over resources, and often systems are, have grudges that are sort of coming out into the open against each other, and it's a barely unified front against the Khan, and it's really showing a strain. Palpatine is the director of the military. He's very busy amassing forces to repulse the Khan's armada. He's trying to hold things together in the Senate. We don't see too much of that. All this is sort of established in the opening crawl and throwaway lines. Like, I'm not going to spend time in like a Senate debate or something like that. But and battles rage as the Jedi and the Republic fleet try to buy the time that the Republic needs to build their forces. And the episode finally opens in a battle scene where Anakin is in his element as a pilot. Obi-Wan Kenobi is leading the fleet. Padme is out there fighting with Anakin. And what happens in this battle is Anakin manages to, through pure skill essentially, as a pilot, breaks through enemy lines and reaches this enemy weapons depot on a occupied world. But Obi-Wan Kenobi calls off the attack because the supply depot is in the middle of the city, and if it gets blown up, then it's going to essentially wipe out the city. And so Obi-Wan says, this isn't what we do. We don't cause that kind of civilian casualties. That's unacceptable, and he calls off the attack. And Anakin is pissed because those munitions are going to be used to kill other civilians down the road, and he says that it's better to destroy them here and now and save lives, down the road, rather than avoid collateral damage now. So he's real pissed. He feels micromanaged, and at this point he's essentially a war hero too. I should point out. This isn't the first time that he's, shown that he's an incredible pilot and warrior. And you can see, like, when he comes back on the ship, people are, congratulating him. And he's one of the few bright points in the war for the Republic military. So there's also a bit of, propaganda swirling around him, like maybe even some news. And you can tell that he is developing a real ego in his interactions with everybody else. That he says he feels like people are getting in his way of winning the war. He's sort of he's starting to drink his own Kool-Aid, essentially. Palpatine is also
real name MacArthur.
Anyway,
go on.
Palpatine is also pissed when he hears about the missed opportunity to blow up the supply depot, because he also agrees with Anakin naturally. He tells the Jedi that they can't pass these chances up or they're going to lose the war, and Obi-Wan says we can't let the war make us murderers, essentially, and we can win with honor. And Palpatine says, you'll lose with your Jedi honor. And Anakin doesn't say anything during this interaction, showing that he's still loyal to Obi-Wan, but you can tell that he agrees with Palpatine, obviously. And eventually what happens is Palpatine offers Anakin an independent command from Obi-Wan, trying to get around Obi-Wan. We also have, Padme and Anakin bonding through, battle. They sort of save each other's bacon a couple times, maybe in this fight. And you can tell that Padme is still, that she's essentially, she has a vendetta against the Khan because of the way that her homeworld was destroyed at the open of the war, essentially just because Khan was upset. And because they failed to, that planet failed to surrender to him quickly enough, pretty much. He kind of destroyed it as an example to the rest of the galaxy. This is what happens if you don't immediately pledge fealty to the Armada when it shows up. So Anakin, tells her that, she's upset about her planet. Anakin tells her that someday that he'll take it back and free it. Free what's left of it, essentially. we move on, and we have a discussion. And this is actually the first time we see Yoda. Yoda has heard about Anakin getting this independent command. Yoda is definitely more on the pacifist spectrum in terms of the Jedi. We have Yoda is the most pacifist of the Jedi Masters. Then we have Obi-Wan, who is sort of in between. He's a military man to an extent. He's a general. He's a very important military commander in this war, but he also doesn't want to. He has very clear restrictions on what he's going to do to win the war. Yoda doesn't even think that the Jedi should properly be involved in the war. They should be essentially not the frontline troops. They shouldn't be the generals. They should be maybe organizing,
advisors,
defending, but never really attacking. And then we have Anakin, who is obviously more aggressive than either one of them, and more willing to go to extremes to win the war. And you can sort of tell that part of this is driven by his relationship with Padme. He feels her loss and wants to exact revenge for her, essentially. And by the way, Jedi are allowed to have relationships, so that's not like a forbidden love. So everyone knows about that. We don't have to sneak around. Big change there, I guess. But it's something that never gets laid out. I can do that, and I will.
Rabble.
It's something that I don't think anyone that was really laid out before it's certainly not laid out in the original trilogy, so I think it's fair game here. Anyway, what happens is Yoda essentially threatens Anakin and tells Anakin that if he does something that is outside the Jedi Order's code of conduct, that he is willing to expel him. And Anakin kind of doesn't believe him. He says that he essentially tells Yoda in not so many words that I'm the rising star of the Jedi. The old ways have almost ruined the Republic. If it weren't for people like me, we'd be standing in the ruined remains of the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, and he sort of, looks around and said, this is here because of me, not because of you. Your way would see the Jedi Order destroyed, my way sees the Jedi Order preserved. And Yoda is pissed, but doesn't, immediately kick him out of the Order for being insubordinate. He says, be careful. I won't hesitate to kick you out. And then we move to Anakin taking his command, and Anakin immediately organizes a strike on an important Armada target. And in that battle, we see, Anakin is leading the attack, but also Obi-Wan is there with him in more of a supporting role now. And we see that Obi-Wan and perhaps some other Jedi are transitioning away from leading Republic forces to leading more of the local militia-type forces, system militia-type forces. So you can tell that maybe it's explicitly laid out that Palpatine is pushing them out, and they're sort of leaving of their own accord the Republic military structure. That they're becoming more paramilitary force rather than integrated into the actual military structure of the Republic. And maybe this is when Obi-Wan meets Bail Organa, and they actually, have a relationship and fight together in this.
A bromance.
Yeah. Well, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what happens in this final battle of this episode is that Obi-Wan and Bail Organa have a clash with Khan, and Obi-Wan has in his own way, a very emotional battle with the Khan, because he's remembering, Captain Rex, who the Khan killed in front of Obi-Wan. And Obi-Wan himself is having some struggles keeping it together in the face of the Khan, but manages to hold it together and does his part in the battle. And what happens is Anakin leads a strike force onto a space station controlled by the Armada above a planet, and the original intent is to take over the space station, but the Khan is too good. He's positioned too many troops. Reinforcements are coming too quickly and outmaneuvering the Republic forces. And it's obvious that they're not going to be able to hold the space station. So what Anakin does instead is he sends everyone out of the room, pretty much, including Padme, and disables the engines that are keeping this space station in orbit, and starts the process of it falling into the planet's atmosphere. Right, he sabotages the engines that are keeping it in orbit and starts falling out of orbit.
No, but the people.
Exactly.
Think of the civilians.
Padme probably raises this concern.
I hate him.
And these are just, these are not, enemy citizens. These are essentially innocent bystanders. But this military space station is really one of the linchpins in the Armada. And essentially what happens is, everybody makes it off the space station. It falls into the atmosphere. The Republic forces have to retreat in the face of the Armada forces. But everyone knows that the Armada losing that space station is an immense blow. It's not like the Death Star, but it's a huge space station, and it's hugely important. And everyone asks Anakin what happened, and he tells them that that he had to do it for the war effort to save lives down the road. And everybody is upset about this. Even Padme is upset, even though she has so much against the Khan, and that she's so gung ho for this war. She sort of has a moment of reflection and is worried about what the war is doing to her and to Anakin. And Obi-Wan tells Anakin that, Yoda calls in, has a little conference call with everybody, and Anakin looks to Obi-Wan to defend his decision, but Obi-Wan says, I can't defend this action. And Yoda tells Anakin that he's, hereby expelled from the Jedi Order.
Dun dun dun.
And that's where we leave the episode, is Anakin is no longer part of the Jedi Order.
That's a good twist. Like that.
And this is only episode 2?
This is episode 2. Episode 3 is called A New Order. Palpatine is the new political leader of the Senate, rising from his role as military commander. And that sort of happens in between episodes. Anakin has Palpatine's old job as director of the military. The war is progressing well for the Republic, and everyone is hopeful that the coming days will see the end of the war, and that's where we start the episode. Is in a battle sequence where Padme is there's battles raging across the galaxy, but the war is coming to a close, and we see in the opening battle that Padme and Obi-Wan are actually fighting together in one of these engagements at the periphery of the war. And what happens is Padme gets shot down as they're sort of driven off by Armada forces. She sort of crash lands on a planet and survives, but no one knows about this, including Obi-Wan, who assumes that she's been killed. It's sort of a crash that no one could survive that. But by some miracle, she ends up surviving, and he doesn't see it. Obi-Wan comes back and tells Anakin, who is still his friend at the end of the day, even though he's sort of left the Order. Obi-Wan is still holding out hope that he can bring Anakin back to the Order and show him, maybe after the war, that he was wrong. Anakin tells, so Obi-Wan tells Anakin that Padme is gone. Anakin is super outraged. He hides it from Obi-Wan well enough, but he's obviously enraged. And Obi-Wan tries to calm him down, but it's not really working. But Palpatine is there with Anakin at the end of the call, and after Obi-Wan hangs up, he tells him that, Palpatine tells Anakin that it's obvious that he's angry, and he tells Anakin that this is where he starts being a little Sithy, right? He says, Anakin, anger can be a powerful tool, can make you strong, etc. And you sort of get the sense that he says that Jedi are not the only. They weren't the only Force users that ever existed, and that other orders were less taboo about using the passion and the emotional parts of your psyche to connect to the Force. And it's obvious if you've seen the original trilogy that Palpatine is a Force user, but it's maybe not so obvious yet. But he knows something about the Force, but it's not obvious that he's a Sith Lord, and he's not really pulling all the strings in this conflict. He's sort of just using it to rise to power. And he tells Anakin that angry justice is righteous. Use your anger, it makes you strong, and maybe we can end the war with that power. And it's essentially what they do. Anakin leads a final assault on the Armada mothership. He ends up killing the Khan in personal combat, in which it's like a rage-fueled dark side combat, and he uses that power to overcome the Khan, where Obi-Wan and others couldn't in the past. And Anakin essentially ends the war that way. The clones surrender after the Khan is killed, and the other forces that have been swept up in the Armada, that also has like alien auxiliary forces from the wild space of conquered worlds and stuff like that. All that melts away after the Khan is killed, and instead of Anakin is worried that the clones will come back and become a military force again, even after the Khan is destroyed. And pretty much he destroys the mothership even after the clones have surrendered. So he kind of murders all the clones to eliminate them as a threat to end the war. And I'll try and speed up here since it's running super long. But essentially what happens next is the tensions within the Republic come to the forefront after the threat of the Armada is removed. Different factions within the Republic try to take power and settle old grudges with their newfound military strength and the lack of any outside threat. And what happens is Palpatine, who has kind of been stoking this situation, has always advocated. Right, he sort of set the situation up, and initially withdraws Republic forces to leave a sort of power vacuum, and in the name of like the war ending, he says, now we can withdraw our military, but then immediately all these Bush wars essentially pop up across the galaxy, and then he assumes emergency powers to restore order to the galaxy. But the Jedi don't back this play, and the Jedi say, you're starting a military dictatorship, and he declares the Jedi traitors to the Republic, and we have a confrontation between Obi-Wan and Anakin at the end. And during that, we do have Obi-Wan defeating Anakin, because he essentially has to, and takes his lightsaber. And he doesn't tell Anakin that he's actually found out since then that Padme is alive. She's, got a transmission out to him, and tells him to tell Anakin that she's pregnant. But he, actually, maybe Anakin should know that she was pregnant before. Yeah, Anakin should probably know that she's pregnant at the start of this episode. Anyway,
does he have to? Do you really?
I kind of like that, just because otherwise it would it helps fuel his rage a lot, and it also makes it more believable to him when he finds out that he has a son later, like 20 years later. And he just assumes that at that point that Obi-Wan lied to him, which is something that he could believe, and it would actually be true. So the end of the episode is Anakin swearing revenge. Anakin is, resuscitated and swears revenge against the Jedi. And he sort of, you see him, maybe not in the final form of Darth Vader, but, on his way to becoming Darth Vader. And the last thing he does is he swears revenge against the Jedi. With Palpatine. Sort of there guiding him.
No giant, no.
No thanks.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. So I do like what you did with the clones, because I had something vaguely similar. I didn't go into anywhere near as much detail, but I know we're running really long in the tooth. We haven't even gotten to Biff.
Yeah, whoa.
Yeah, Biff, like the storyboards and everything.
What I'm finding when I compare what you two have done, there are a lot of similarities with what I even wound up creating. A little twist, but a lot of similarities, which is really kind of interesting, the way that all kind of is playing out. But that's it. I like what I've been hearing so far. It's neat perspectives. So really, really slick.
All right. Well, cool. Biff, do you want to go ahead with yours?
Yeah, and I think I can really jam this thing in quick, because I'm going to be kind of referencing a little bit of what you guys have done already. So in kind of laying a little bit of a background, one thing that's always kind of intrigued me with the whole Jedi aspect has been like, why isn't the Sith maybe as more present within the galaxy? And I mean, not like they've got a body kind of like the Council, but why aren't there more Sith just kind of scattered all over the place? I think Rebels and maybe a little bit of the Clone Wars has kind of touched upon how the Sith can kind of exist out on the fringes, if you will. But I really wanted to try to bring that more into this first trilogy. So basically a good portion of what's going to be going on in the trilogy is kind of like a turf battle between a couple of Sith pairs, if you will. And that kind of carries along the first three episodes. I have my episode 1. I didn't do any kind of a scroll or anything, but I have my episode 1 where there is this external military force that's making an incursion into the Republic space, and they're coming from wild space, just like one of you two had. I think Phil had the external threat coming in. This external threat is actually being led by Sith, by a master and an apprentice. They go ahead and kind of invade this planet. And this planet that they're invading, again, it's this off-the-cuff planet. I think I called it Sky in my writing. But it's the hole in the wall. It's not the Tatooine type scenario. Hole in the wall. And it also happens to be where Anakin is growing up at this planet. Anakin still has a little bit of that mysterious background. He's kind of like an orphan that's been adopted by a family, so you don't really know where he comes from. But nobody's really thinking too much of it. You just, again, kind of staying with the mythos. You don't really know where he's from. So the invading force, it comes in, it takes over, starts taking over the planet. And there's a little scene where there's some scientists from this invading force, and they're checking out like the minerals in the soil, and they report back some really positive results to this Sith leader. I call this Sith leader Maxium, and he's actually the apprentice in this particular scenario. So Maxium calls back to his master, who I call Protagon, and he gives him the good news about, hey, all the long-range scanners, all that data was right. This place is just totally ripe in this particular mineral that they're looking for. So when the invading force attacks the planet, there's some civilians that were able to get a distress signal out, and that goes back to the Republic. And much like in the other two with J-Bots and Phils, Palp isn't like this really big political figure. I have him as he's in the military. He's the intelligence, the main intelligence guy within the military, and he is kind of serving as a liaison between the Senate, the Jedi Council, and the military. So he's kind of right in the middle of everything. I wanted to put Palp in a kind of an influential area to where maybe he could build up his own little cadre of generals and so forth, his own little team, but he could also manipulate information. Intelligence is going to gather information and distribute it out. He could maybe insert some or hold back information so he could kind of begin to influence things. To J-Bot's point early on, one thing I didn't like about the original trilogy, if Palp had a great big master plan, if one wants to argue that, it does seem a little bit flaky that things just came together too well for him. I don't think that he had one big master plan and knew it all from kind of like day one, if you will. But the movie didn't come across very well, in my opinion, that he was kind of reacting as things occurred. So in mine, I tried to have him, he gets a little bit of information, then he makes a decision based upon it, and gets a little bit more, and then maybe alters his plan accordingly. So the Republic hears the distress signal, and Palp is now in a position to communicate out. I forgot to mention that Darth Maul is on the planet and sees the invasion take place and notices that there's a Sith. And Darth Maul then winds up reporting back to Palpatine, hey, we've got some Sith that are kind of encroaching into our territory, but doesn't know that there's two at that point in time. So in a nutshell, for this kind of to drive to a closer conclusion of my episode 1, Palp tries to use the Jedi to take out the Sith that are making this threat onto the Republic. And this is where it kind of comes into that turf war amongst the Sith. So Palp kind of convinces the Council and the Jedi, hey, we need to send some people to do an investigation. They happen to send Yoda, Obi-Wan, who are master and apprentice. Qui-Gon is gone. He's not around. And Luminara and Asajj are master and apprentice. So they show up on the planet. There's a kind of a fight that eventually takes place. I'm trying to really roll through all this stuff. Oh, yeah, I forgot. Got to bring Jango Fett into this. Sorry. I'm moving a little too quickly. So when Palp convinces the Order to go investigate, he tells them that they'll get some assistance through a platoon of soldiers that will rendezvous with them before they head to this particular planet sky. The soldiers are going to be led by Jango Fett. I wanted Jango to be a lot more of a powerful character, much like how J-Bot did. So the troops, the Jedi, they land. They begin doing battle with the invading force. As they're encroaching in the villages and so forth, Anakin's family goes to hide Anakin and all of his siblings and so forth in the caves. Anakin's not too thrilled at that, but he acquiesces. His mother figure and a leader, they go off leaving the kids alone to go send off another distress signal to try to get help. And that's going to ultimately lead to a battle between the Sith leader Maxium, who's on the planet, his mother, and Anakin when they're in the comm center where this distress signal is being sent out. Anakin's mother figure is apparently pretty good with a blaster because she's able to kill off the guards that go along with Maxium. But Maxium defends himself from Anakin's mother's attack by putting her into like this force grip. And Anakin at this point kind of jumps out of his little hiding place there in this little comm center, and he's all totally emotionally charged because he doesn't want his mother to die. And in the process of him just being all emotionally charged, some of the minerals in the cave wall that constitute this comm center change, and they like glow, and then they change into a different color. And what's happening here is I wanted to introduce this idea of like a neutral force, kind of reminiscent of in the legends. There were I want to call them salamanders that were on Dagobah that kind of made this force neutral space, if you will.
Are you talking about Ysalamiri?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
The anti-force bubbles. So no force within the bubble.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I'm going to kind of
is that what you're talking about?
Play into this.
Okay.
Yeah. It's that. I don't necessarily know. I suppose in a few moments you'll kind of see how the force begins to weigh off. But I wanted there to be some kind of a natural, somewhat natural occurrence of the ability to counter the force. You know, we've got the good side, we've got the dark side, we've got the Bendu now who's in the middle.
Right.
Let's really play off of kind of none, if you will, or the ability to create none. So after the minerals go through this transformation, Maxium's force powers begin to wane, and the force script begins to wane off. He realizes that the mother is going to be able to bring the gun up to shoot him, so he's got to slice her in half, and she dies. So Anakin's totally going nuts. And at this point in time, this is when Yoda and Obi-Wan come in, and there's a big battle. Maxium realizes that Anakin might be a key to the minerals, but Obi-Wan and Yoda are totally clueless to that aspect of it. But there's a big fight. Anakin, Obi-Wan, Yoda are kind of in this retreating mode to get back to the ship, to just get out of Dodge, because the battle is not going well for the Republic forces, because they're starting to be overtaken. And so they basically wind up falling back to the ship, and they get out of Dodge pretty quick. One thing that I failed to mention was in the ground battle. Sorry, I had to cough there. In the ground battle before the comm center fight, Obi-Wan and Yoda were kind of noticing that their ability to use force powers on the invaders wasn't exactly the best. If they tried to manipulate the people to like move them or maybe do a mind trick or something, it wouldn't work. And they weren't necessarily stupid battle droids. They would react to the changing environment. If the Jedi sent down boulders crashing on them, they would adapt pretty quick and learn the little tricks and so forth. So after this whole big battle scene, the Yoda and the group, they're back at Coruscant. They report to the council, including Palpatine. Yoda makes the case that they need to keep fighting this force and talks about the connection to the Sith Lord. Palpatine is a little bit surprised that the Jedi were not able to eliminate the Sith, so he's kind of like, these guys must be pretty good. And so Palp is in agreement that the Republic needs to continue to engage the emerging threat. Yoda goes off and kind of separately to the council. He talks a little bit more about the Sith. He's wondering why they're interested in this particular planet, and he talks a little bit about what happened with Anakin in the cave. They bring up this idea of him still being the chosen one, but it's just kind of more lighthearted than anything else. It's nothing hardcore and serious, but they don't even know any of the connection to the crystals that have been transformed into the cave because they missed all that. So the movie to me just kind of comes to this culminating battle where with the invading force that's still somewhat present, that the Republic is successful, but it is at a huge price. There's a lot of self-sacrifice that goes on, and the invaders are in fact forced to retreat. In that retreat, we as viewers learn that it'll just be a matter of time before they can bring even more forces to bear into the Republic space, and that the Republic forces are able to kind of trace some of the communications back into wild space. And that culminates in kind of the Senate then agreeing that, hey, we need to build a larger defensive force to augment the Jedi. And here's where they would turn to Jango Fett as being the template for creating an army through clone, mass accelerated clone, simply because Jango is the best non-Jedi person that they have in the fight. So episode 2 is going to take place about 7 years later. Obi-Wan and Asajj, they're now Jedi Knights. The Senate has clearly voted to build a clone army. Jango's is the model. Jango happens to be married. He's got a son. So there's your Boba Fett. A start off. Obi-Wan and Anakin are master and Padawan now. There's been a lot of incursions by the invaders since the episode 1. They've got a pretty good stronghold on a small section of the galaxies. The Republic forces, they've figured out that they're chasing after certain minerals. So that has given them a little bit of an advantage in that they kind of know where maybe the next attacks are going to come. So even though they're still kind of inferior, they're holding their own because they have a little bit of a forward vision as to where the invaders are going to go. Palp's still kind of freaked out about the Sith and their association with the invaders. So he decides to set up a kind of a situation where the invaders are going to get a pretty good surprise attack on a Republic planet. So he leaks out information that kind of forces the hand of the invaders to go to this particular planet. And Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Asajj are at that particular planet helping to prepare the defenses. Jango is going to be there leading the troops that are present. Palp's going to be in the area, probably like on a flagship, and he's shuttling from planet side from time to time as things are getting ready. This is where we're introduced to Padme. She's a young girl, same age as Anakin, and she's pretty potent in her own right. She's leading some of the local militia. And here's where that whole love story thing that you guys had, for me, kind of falls apart. The way I was thinking about it, it would be kind of one of those, the night before the big battle, before the invaders drop out of hyperspace, Anakin and Padme are just off looking at defenses, trying to set something up. They get a little too cavalier with some drink or something, and they wind up spending the night together. It's a one night kind of stand. There's nothing.
Luke is a one night stand, baby. Oh my god!
Yeah, Biff's like, I can't stand romance in my science fiction. Get this stuff out of here. I want classic 80s action. I want one night of sleeping after all this action, and then back to bombs and explosions.
Yeah. So obviously they've been kind of spending some time together, but it's not like this, romance type thing. So there's certainly, they know each other, but it's, the one night kind of stand thing and all the awkwardness that comes along with that. Maul is on the planet secretly. He's kind of feeding back information to Palp about specific where this is, where this defense is, all those types of things. And Palp is going to create a message with all this information, and he's ultimately going to leak that information out of Jango's headquarters to the invaders to make it look like Jango is a traitor. So the next day, invading fleet drops out of hyperspace. Big battle takes place. I'm sorry. And again, Pelp sends that message out from the HQ, which totally begins to turn the battle then. And it turns out to be like this crushing defeat for the Republic. In the battle that ensues, Palp and Maul lure the two Sith Lords, Maxim and Protegan, off on kind of a side, off on the side, if you will, tricking the Maxim and Protean into thinking that the Jedi are in a particular location. There's a fight that ensues between these two Sith pair, but they wind up also being intercepted, if you will, by Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Asajj, and Padme as well. Pelp doesn't really want to be discovered at this point in time, so he sacrifices Maul and kind of runs off. And Protean does a similar thing with Maxim. He kind of sacrifices his apprentice in order to get out of the situation. In the ensuing battle that takes place now between the two Sith apprentices and our three Jedi and Padme, Obi-Wan and Maul go at it pretty hard, and Obi-Wan comes out victorious, whereas Maul winds up having to kind of run off and escape, so we can build some tension between those two. Padme, Anakin, and Asajj wind up going after Maxim. Something happens to Padme as a result of Anakin's desire to exact revenge on Maxim. So kind of Anakin's putting people at risk because he's being so aggressive. That Padme kind of gets separated from the group, and Obi-Wan sees this and thinks she might be dead, or kind of assumes it. A similar thing winds up happening with Asajj, where Anakin does something, I don't know what, but it basically makes it look like Asajj is in fact dead. And Anakin is forced to leave the engagement after he successfully kills Maxim, but something's going on to where Anakin's got to leave, so he thinks Asajj is dead, and he doesn't really know what wound up happening to Padme, but Obi-Wan's got a little bit of an idea as to what's going on. The reality of the situation is that Asajj did in fact survive. Maybe like something happened to her lightsaber or something, so she's pretty much defenseless, and she winds up running into Protegan. And there's a big overpowering aspect, and Asajj winds up turning to the dark side as a result of that little encounter, because she's so weak and everything. So Anakin winds up leaving this little battle very much disturbed because of what he did and how it jeopardized Asajj and Padme. Again, the Republic forces, they have to retreat from this battle. It's a huge, massive, crushing blow. In the immediate aftermath of the battle, this transmission from Jango's headquarters is revealed. Jango is he's arrested and sent off to Coruscant to stand trial. But Pelp, knowing that it was a complete setup, doesn't want any detailed investigation into this. So he arranges to have the Jedi basically escort Jango back to Coruscant. And these would be different Jedi characters, not our main characters, but different Jedi. And basically has the transport destroyed in the way. And he makes it look, he manufactures some evidence to make it look as though the Jedi did not properly defend Jango on the return back. That'll give Boba something to cling to in his quest to knock off the Jedi in the future. So we basically kind of wrap up episode 2 with the Jedi left to wonder who the two Sith they encountered, which were not the masters, they were the apprentices, to understand who they were and how they were involved in the invasion. The Senate becomes very vocal in its concern that the war is not going well, especially given the fact that there was a quote-unquote traitor in their ranks. They do begin to question seriously Jedi military leadership. And based upon all of this, Pelp not necessarily directly, but based upon all these changing opinions, in the Senate, Pelp winds up holding a meeting kind of with his inner circle of military personnel and suggests that in order to maintain the Republic, they may have to start working counter to what the Jedi want in order to defeat the invaders. So that takes us then to episode 3, which is going to take place probably about 3 years-ish after episode 2. I think, Phil, you had it to where kind of the Jedi were being pushed out of military.
That's right. They're pushing out. They were being pushed out, and they were leaving of their own will because Yoda, the leader of the Jedi, essentially didn't want to be involved in the military matters at that point anyway.
Okay. So in mine, it's not exactly the same, but you basically wind up having Republic forces kind of being separated into 2 groups. There are those that still have Jedi leadership and those that don't have any Jedi leadership associated whatsoever. And the ones that don't have Jedi leadership are kind of secretly aligned to Pelp. And Palpatine is becoming a more prominent figure, a more popular figure within the Senate. So there's an internal division going on within the Senate. And Pelp is kind of beginning to realize that maybe his best path forward is to really, rather than outright defeating the invading force, is to just defeat his counter, Protagon, and take over the invading forces. But of course, the Jedi, they're not exactly stupid. They've started to grow suspicious of Pelp and his little factions and tensions and closely monitor his movements. So again, Pelp needs to set up an encounter with Protagon to lure him into a particular battle to take him out. So the Jedi are having Anakin and Obi-Wan trail Pelp somewhat secretly. So Pelp does, in fact, set up this encounter with Protagon on some planet someplace, and Obi-Wan and Anakin follow him. Anakin is unknowingly hot on Pelp's trail, while Obi-Wan is following some decoy trail that Pelp happens to just kind of leave behind, because again, he's trying to cover his tracks as well. In the trail that Obi-Wan is following, he happens to encounter Padme. Again, she now has twins. They're 2 or 3 years old at this point. And she's once again leading some local resistance cell. Obi-Wan gets stuck behind enemy lines where he is with Padme, and learns a little bit more about the twins and how they're kind of almost being taken care of somewhat remotely, not directly by Padme. I think kind of like a daycare scenario or something like that. Because, of course, Padme's kind of busy doing her resistance thing.
Space daycare.
There you go. Space daycare. So there's the battle that takes place between Pelp and Protagon. Pelp is surprised with the appearance of a new, Asajj, because she's been converted over. But in a twist, Asajj uses this moment as her opportunity to turn on her own master, Protagon, and she winds up killing him. So she tries to use her little knowledge of the special crystals to try and defeat Pelp, but she is not successful in that whatsoever. And Pelp forces her to reveal all of the secrets of the Narthis crystals, as I'm calling them, Narthis crystals, through some pretty hefty, aggressive negotiations. So Pelp winds up learning about their ability to kind of have this neutralizing force, and an aspect of, if you bring the Kyber crystals and this Narthis crystals together, you get a lot of power, kind of like destructive power. To me, this was kind of laying the foundation for the Death Star weaponry. So it's about this time that Anakin shows up, because he's been hot on the trail. Anakin thinks Asajj is still on the dark side. She's weak at this point because she's been beaten down. So Anakin engages Pelp. Again, the whole emotions come into play. And this is when Pelp kind of realizes that Anakin's really, really powerful. And once again, he kind of transforms some of the minerals and so forth that are around him into this Narthis crystal. So Pelp is now really beginning to realize that Anakin could be a key to his final plan. The fight between Palp and Anakin kind of ends on neutral terms. Somehow Palp winds up running away. And Palp winds up using his knowledge now of these two crystals to make some crude weapons that have a major impact now on the invading force. But again, it's just being utilized within his loyal forces. So this culminates in kind of forcing a vote in the Senate regarding who should be controlling the military forces. Should it be the Jedi or should it be somebody else? And true to form, the Senate basically says, hey, we're going to go with Palp. And they kind of grant him kind of like supreme martial law, the beginnings of the Empire. Let's see here. Where am I in my notes? Okay. So now that Palp has got the military, he needs to get Anakin on his side to start making more of these crystals as soon as he can. Although he could make them, they're just not, I suppose, as good or whatever. But so he's got to lay some kind of a framework to draw in Anakin and get him over onto his side. So since Obi-Wan finally now, for some reason, gets free from the planet and can communicate to the outside world, Obi-Wan gets in touch with Anakin and says, hey, I found Padme and there's something I need to tell you. So Palp somehow learns of this transmission and says, oh, this is my moment. I'm going to move. So he sets him plan in motion to implicate Obi-Wan in Padme's death, puts the plan in motion. Padme is killed, but the twins are not killed because Padme usually doesn't kind of hang out with the twins. They're traveling by some different route or something like that. And the resulting incident clearly makes it look like Obi-Wan has failed Anakin in a big way. So that leads to the confrontation between Obi-Wan and Anakin. The two of them talk about the future, the use of the weaponry or not to use this new weaponry. A big fight, and kind of true to form in episode 3, Obi-Wan is victorious because he's got the higher ground. I'm just kidding.
I was going to say he gets the high ground, of course.
And winds up leaving Anakin to basically die. That's where Palp comes in with his medical team, true to form in episode 3. Obi-Wan takes the long way back to kind of report what he's learned to the council. And much like kind of in episode 3, Mace and Yoda make a move to arrest Palp shortly thereafter. And this is when Palp reveals himself to be the Sith Lord. And there's a big, huge fight. Mace winds up dying. Yoda escapes. And that puts in play this whole notion of like an Order X-66, but it's utilizing the crystals and some of these new powers to just start chasing after all of the Jedi. And it folds in a little bit of the invading force and the Republic army into one big fighting force that can go off to try to chase down the Jedi. So Obi-Wan and Yoda are left saying, hey, we need to go get those twins if we're ever going to have a chance, and kind of lays the groundwork for episode 4. And you're kind of left with, in the end, Palp and Darth having the ability to build the ingredients necessary to build a super weapon. Cool. And that's it.
Huh. Cool. I like it. What do you guys think of that one?
The minerals, what do you call them again? The
Narthus crystals?
Narthus crystals.
I thought they were going to be midichlorians is what I would have called them.
I was worried that's where he was going in the first part. They find this mineral. I'm like, no, not the midichlorian mineral. Anakin grew up on a planet surrounded by midichlorians. Like, oh no.
No, please, no. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and it's an interesting direction that you take it with the Jedi and Sith turf war, or Sith versus Sith also. Turf wars coming in.
I do kind of like that because there's not like there's always two. It's like, well, there's never more than two. Like,
yeah, come on.
What are you trying to say? Like, there's only two ever?
Big galaxy. Big galaxy, guys. Come on.
Yeah. That always bothered me. That whole rule of two thing with Oh well. What you got, Jim?
All right. Yeah. Well, it is late, and I do have other obligations. We're coming up on Endor. I'll be very brief. And one thing that I thought I liked. I noticed that you guys all have like an external force, an external war, like an invasion that's going on. And when I was a kid, and when Star Wars came out, because I saw it when I was like 7 or 8 years old, and when they talked about the Clone Wars, and I thought about what were the Clone Wars, like what is that? What could that possibly be? And in my little, feverish mind, I thought there would be like doppelgangers.
So everybody's like getting cloned, like there's widespread cloning.
Yeah, like there's this total mind mess with you that's about like people being clones, and there's conflicting orders, and there's like this secret group of clones that are taking over from the inside. There's this confusion, and they're having to like purge clones, and they get one cell, but then it's like they thought they have it. It turns out there's more clones that need to be the clones are being used by the Sith to kind of create all this frustration and internal conflict, and there's probably like the separatists. But are the separatists trying to get away from the Republic and the clones, or are they the clones, or is the Republic the clones? And the Jedi can help with that, but they're still spread too thin, and there's just the Clone Wars were basically really hard to understand because you didn't even know who was your enemy, and that was the real danger. It was like an internal threat, like people were trying to take over and destroy things from within. And that's how I saw the Clone Wars as a kid. And so to me, that's how I would switch it. And basically, I'm not even going to go into anywhere near as much detail, but just say that is the Clone Wars, is that the bad guys are not external. They're all and so basically the Palpatine has to take over as Chancellor, extra powers. A lot of that stays overall the same, and the Jedi get whittled down a bit, and Palpatine is still bad guy, but overall that's the whole concept to me. I won't even flesh it out too much more than that, but like I had the first one, I had all these thoughts about keep it roughly the same you could, but just I would actually have a little bit more conflict. They'd make the Gungans less stupid, get rid of Jar Jar, none of the droids in the first 3, but you could even keep it the same, but have like the Trade Federation be clones overall, and there's tension between the Gungans and the humans, and the Trade Federation's trying to exploit that for their own benefit, and it's causing all these problems with the Senate. The Jedi go in to try to fix it, but clones and Sith mess with them. There's almost like conflict between the two groups, but then the Jedi are able to come in with Amidala and forge an alliance and fight off the Trade Federation and reveal the clones, and Qui-Gon gets killed. A lot can stay the same in that aspect, but just tweak it a bit, make it better, not so bad.
Huh.
Make it better. Just make it better. That would be my change. Better.
I don't think it'd be that hard, really, to just improve it.
Yeah, having the Clone Wars as a you don't know who the enemy is type war instead of a conventional war like we have is an interesting idea.
Yeah, because that always intrigued me. Like that kind of like, oh, it's going to be like that. You won't know what's going on.
Body Snatchers war, more like.
Yeah,
they live. Cool. It's all they live. Got to put on these special glasses in order to know who the clones are. Hey, I just rewrote it, and that's how we get that climactic scene between Obi-Wan and Anakin. It's basically the same Roddy Piper fight from They Live. I said, put on the glasses. Like this. What the heck what kind of movie is this again? Like,
yeah.
Okay, so I just think overall that idea of clones and the Clone Wars is much more exciting and interesting to me. It kind of captured it. It was sci-fi. That to me sounded a lot more interesting than just the clones being troopers. It didn't make sense that you name the war after your own troops.
Yeah, the clone thing had to be central to the war somehow. I felt also.
Yeah, and
so
pretty much that. But
I probably even failed to mention it, but that invading force that I had, they were androids. So you had this idea of clone-ish on both sides. Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Because I too was kind of like, you call it the Clone Wars, but you're only then referring to one side. It's kind of like the French and Indian War. You'd think the French and the Indians were fighting, but they were on the same side. So
right. Well, you name it after your enemies, because if you're the English-speaking people, the French and Indian Wars is basically you're fighting the French and Indians.
See, I looked at it and I got the idea, but I looked at it on mine because obviously I use Mandalorians. You couldn't call it the Mandalorian War because there already was one. So the only way to distinguish it would be, it's a clone war. This is the same people were fighting, but it was a clone war versus the Mandalorian War. So that was, I guess it's not a great excuse, but that was where I was going with it. But I was like, do you put clones on both sides of the fight? Like
That's another possibility. Yeah.
That was the only other thing I could think of was put clones on both sides. Then it really is a clone war. But then what's the threat to the galaxy? If it's just two armies just reproducing themselves, fighting. So
yeah, and so that was me, and that was my thought. I just liked it better to have it that way. That the enemies were the clones, and because that's usually how you name the war. And it just sounded more intriguing and more interesting. That's how the Jedi were integral, because they could help determine who was a clone or not, but it's still even hard for them. And so it added all this confusion, which gave Palpatine the chance to get stronger. And overall, Anakin gets turned to the dark side, much the same similar type path, but just do it with better writing and actors. You could
and that's sort of that Star Wars sense too, the playful bickering that you see in all the original trilogy episodes, but not in the prequel episodes so much.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, like get this walking carpet out of my way type stuff.
Yeah.
No one really says that kind of stuff in the prequels that I remember.
The best expression I heard that someone said was everything everyone said in the prequels was almost as if they had quotes around it. Like everything had portent and seriousness, and it was like...
Yeah, it was a little too... Yeah, especially with the Jedi. The Jedi would take themselves way too seriously. My Jedi would be, more personality. Would have more personality. I don't know.
That's why I cut most of mine out of it. I was like, I cut so much of mine out. I was like, I ain't gonna put Mace in this movie. What the hell? They're just fighting somewhere else. So we don't care about those guys.
Yeah.
If you're making it a story about a couple people, I do like Biff's like one night stand.
Yeah, that's an interesting innovation.
That's one way to just hack out all the romance. Let's get rid of like all this romantic crap that George Lucas sucks at, and just make it a one night stand. Be done with it.
Well, I like it that you could deal with even with clones of Padme and stuff, and mess with Anakin, and
oh my god,
all the things you could do.
Feels like
it's an evil twin.
That's what I'd worry about. So wait a minute, is the Darth Vader from this time just a clone? The unfortunate part is they exist. Clones exist in the Star Wars universe, so there's no telling how far they go with it. So
did they not do something like that in the Dune series, to where in the books that kind of follow the more popular, they just keep having like these clones, and you it's like the same person, and it's like the 5th iteration of them or something.
Duncan Idaho, more like the 25th iteration of him. When they get to some of the later ones. But like the idea for me was that the clones were very controlled, but they couldn't last too. Like the clones were eventually all wiped out. Like I don't want to have like, is it a clone of Anakin that's the real father or blah blah blah. I'd rather have it just that the clones were all defeated, but I don't know.
They come with a self-destruct button. That's the secret right there.
Like they seriously won, but it still was a tough fight. I guess that's what I'm going for.
Kind of like the Blade Runner scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Expiration date.
That is actually one of my top favorite movies, so I do like Blade Runner.
Yeah.
But this, I even thought about this. Like this is what I thought it was about as a kid, even before Blade Runner came out. Like this was to me like, oh, this is going to be so cool. This is what the movie is going to be about. I'm really excited. So, yeah, I guess that would be my take on it.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, we're really late at this point, so I don't.
God, this is yeah. This is a super.
Well, it's a special anniversary episode of 5 hours long.
That's right.
But it was good. I liked hearing everybody's ideas. That was really neat.
Yeah, everyone had different takes.
So we should say anyone who's actually sat through it at this point, you should write it and tell us which version you like better.
Yes, write it. Submit your version in an essay form.
No, don't do that, because then it'll take so long just to read everybody's submissions. Just tell us which one of ours you like better.
That's right. Yeah, we don't care about yours. We just want how awesome ours were.
Yeah, but next week we'll be back with X-Wing content. I think we'll probably have a Gen Con-centric episode next week, no?
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe go over the second round of missions, I think would be a good... Normally we don't plan out episodes ahead of time like this. But or at least tell you what we're planning. But,
yeah, we have to promise we're going to actually have X-Wing content.
I feel the need to assure people that we are going to continue being an X-Wing podcast.
Yeah.
Have no fear. Yep.
All right, guys. With that, we're really late. I'll go ahead and call it, and I look forward to doing this again next week. All right. See you guys.
See ya.
See ya.